You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Thrilled on the show today to have Erik Elsom. He's a video game music maestro, creating amazing tributes to classic soundtracks. His latest project, a complete remaster of the iconic King's Quest VI soundtrack that he's titled An Ode to the Isles. Hey Erik, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Nice. Before Paul, you even have a chance to say something. I am curious. How come? So you've done soundtracks. This isn't your first soundtrack, right? This is at least your second. You did King's Quest V before.
Yeah, that's really the only one that I've done a full game on so far. I think it turned out pretty well. I have learned a lot since then, though, and I actually do have every intention of re-releasing Songs of Serenia again, just digitally, though. We're not going to do another vinyl because that's way too much work and money, but at least digitally, because I know I could make it even better because of, like I said, when you do something practically every night for 2 years straight, there's going to be some improvement there, I would at least hope. So, but we've applied all of that to King's Quest VI in this release, and it just released and hosted our digital release last night, March, what would that be, the 8th, and got a bunch of listens already. It's kind of fun. And then we were supposed to launch the vinyl campaign as well last night, but
right.
Being on a new platform, because Crates is not really functional at the moment. So we're moving on this campaign to Digger's Factory. They have a lot of great artists over there, and I'm actually kind of intimidated by a lot of their other vinyls and albums they have. But I think it'll be a great platform. But apparently when you launch your campaign there, they have to review it. And they're based out of France. So by the time I was done with work, they were already closed for the whole weekend. It's probably going to be a Monday launch.
The time zone thing.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, this is going to be a great opportunity for, now think about this. Everybody loves King's Quest VI. Honestly, I mean, I've never met anybody who I've ever talked to that's played a Sierra game that isn't a huge fan of King's Quest VI. So we thought it would be a super cool idea to go through the game, but with like a little bit of a musical perspective. So we're going to kind of like just focus on King's Quest VI and all the wonder that is there. Girl in the Tower will definitely be brought up. Okay, you can come in now, Paul. Hi.
Wow. Unbelievable. I don't appreciate the way you sent me to the kiddie table back there. You benched me off the bat. You're just like...
You may enter now, so...
Jeez Louise. All right. That was. I appreciate the intro, too. That was short. I'm usually able to do a quick pee while you introduce a guest, but I'll have to hold it for now. But hey, everybody. Hey, Erik. So, hi. And that's me in the show now, so...
You had all the correct inventory items and you were able to access the showroom, which is a big part of King's Quest VI. There is definitely some inventory management, and there's things that you can pick up and things that you can miss and things that you can do. But hey, now let's hear a little bit about what is King's Quest VI for the 2 listeners that we have that don't know.
Yeah. Well, who's going to take the reins here? Anybody?
I panicked. Yeah, sorry about that.
I can do it. I was just trying to be nice. So this game is a Roberta Williams special with some writing by Jane Jensen. And also, let's see, who else is in this? You guys. I think there's some people. Familiar...
For sure.
Other people,
yeah.
There's some familiar voice work from people that we know that have done other games. I mean, here and there. I think the narrator was Bill Ratner. He did Mass Effect and stuff for people that are into slightly more modern games. Or Robbie Benson. He did Beauty and the Beast.
And only
right,
Beauty
but he does not.
He's got the weirdest.
And he doesn't voice Beast in this game, which is hilarious to me.
He must. Yeah, that's a good point. He must have like got a royalties contract or something, because he basically did Beauty and the Beast and was like, I'm done. I'm good. We're good here, boys. I'm just gonna pack it in and go home. So that's kind of awesome for him. But there's did you know that Ralph Wiggum is in the game? Buddy Minnie Mouse. Rusty Taylor is her name. Rusty Taylor does. She was Beauty. She was the Oyster. She was Lady Celeste. in the game, and then she's also done a ton of Minnie Mouse voice work, and I believe Ralph
Wow.
Wiggum. Yeah, that was cool. There's
That's
also
Yeah, they
Duckworth.
definitely stepped up the game. Or with the voice work in the game is just incredible compared to what it was in 5.
Yeah, and it was almost like the golden era of voice acting because it was. I've heard before somebody put it as an unoriginal statement that Robin Williams, in a sense, almost kind of I don't want to say ruin it because that would put unnecessarily negative connotation on it, but he kind of brought like big Hollywood names into animated features and they never went
Mm.
back. So now it's like you got Chris Pratt and there's no like unknown actors doing voices anymore, whereas like that's where it kind of used to be. So that's why I say this is almost the golden era of voice actors because it was still like a specialized profession before movies felt
Mhm.
that they needed a big Hollywood name to be the voices as well. So it's just kind of cool. You got like Michelangelo, the voice of Michelangelo is in there. I forgot his name. I'm just interested in the turtle. Ron Feinberg. There we go. Um,
right.
one of those, I have another good one. Oh,
Oh, he
Scooby
did
Doo.
the King and the Lord of the Dead. Oh, and Gruff. That's who Rob Feinberg did. Oh, I
Lord of
didn't even
Dead.
know that was him.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Hmm.
buddy Don Messick, who was Allie and the Gnomes, he was Scooby Doo.
Hmm.
So that was pretty cool. And that's the end of my voice acting stats. Facts. Nope.
And we've got some
Well,
great musicians that were involved as well. I mean, this game is musically quite a delight.
oh yeah, Chris Brayman's a genius. He's
Hmm.
absolutely one of my favorite Sierra composers for sure. Working on his stuff, it was definitely more challenging than I was prepared for. But then that's probably why it took me a lot longer than it did with 5. But it was just every note of it was an honor to mess with. It was just fascinating, and the orchestrations. It was. I think my favorite part about Chris Brayman, if I can just sidetrack for a little bit here, is my wife, for instance, has never played any of these games more than just a few minutes. It's just not really her thing. We do it sometimes, but yeah, she doesn't. I don't think we've ever booted up 6 at all. Even it was just a little bit of 5 one time we played. But um, I would play one of the final tracks that we ended up finishing for her, and I would ask her like, "What do you think is happening during this scene?" And 9 out of 10 times she could completely nail it just by listening to his song. That's the genius of Chris
Mhm.
Brayman, and his ability to match the mood of a room to a song
Oh my God,
is
yes.
second to none in my opinion. It's perfect the way he has the ability to do that. So,
And
and then
mount
of
the
course we can't
tension.
forget Mark Siebert, but yeah.
Hmm.
When you said it was a little trickier than you anticipated, okay, so I should say for disclosure, and just so I can attempt to make some sort of sense for not only you but everybody listening, is I'm only looking at the tracks from Ode to the Isles, so I'm not looking at like the length of the tracks from the game, but they're quite long. So I don't know how much of that
Mhm.
was your remastering, and how much was from the game, but was part of the intricacy in the fact that these are like pretty big tracks.
Well, the way I did 5 and 6, I did the same way. Whereas with 5, I had a side of the album. One side of the vinyl would have a couple of different regions of the game. So there was like the town and then the desert, and then the next side was the swamp and the mountains, and so on and so forth. So with 6, it was segmented even easier because now we're dealing with islands. So I
Mm.
literally have 2 islands on each side of the album, and then there's the intro and the castle and finale. And then we also threw an additional The Girl on the Tower track in there. But yeah, so you have an entire island on one kind of longer track, but every song in the game is represented. Except for,
Hmm.
I don't think I did the part where he feigns death and it's just like this kind of heartbeat background sound. I didn't really consider that necessarily a song per se.
Right.
There is a little bit of
Hmm.
music that goes along with it, but with a vinyl, like the other thing is too, you're really crammed for time. So I had to pick and choose a couple of little things like that to just kind of leave out. But other than that, there's 60 individual tracks that ended up in it. They're all just consolidated into bigger islands, if you will. So
Okay, thank you. That helps to understand. Okay, so for the most part,
yeah,
it is a pretty large collection of would you say, I don't know, just short loops, I guess.
yeah. Typically, each song will play through a couple of times. If it's a particularly longer one or like a intro sequence or something, obviously those aren't looping type of deal. But yeah, I try to get 1 or 2 out of each song.
Right.
Is generally what we fit. So.
And you've got quite a group. I mean, you've got violinists, trombonists, clarinets, flutes. You've got people singing. You've got people doing art. There's guitar. I mean, what an amazing collaboration. And I mean, these are all the names I'm seeing here on your credits are people that I see out there in the community. We've got the Space Quest historian and Sarah Kelly and Jackie Stewart and Error 47, Say Mistage, Steve Coop, Bruce Farnese. Like these are all community people. So well done on sourcing your talent, my friend.
Well, they are a community effort, that's for sure. This is not at all just me doing this, especially with Error 47, now contributing an entire Girl in the Tower cover. But it was there's quite a lot of great support, and I hope the community will support the campaign as well, so we can pay these people what they're worth for their contributions. So
yeah, it's insane.
It's been a fun project, but
we'll definitely link that in the description for everybody listening too. And speaking of listening, in case Sarah Kelly and Jackie Stewart are listening, man, you guys just killed it on Girl in the Tower. I knew
and
Jack.
You guys haven't even heard the final version of that either. It's getting fully
not the
worked
whole
on.
thing, eh? Oh my God, amazing!
It's they're adding more effect and they're moving a couple of things around. What you're hearing right now is like the second to the last version. I bet we'll have it ready to go by the end for sure. So,
that's cool. Okay, no, it's like I knew Jackie could sing, but Sarah Kelly, I didn't. She just like holy crow. Is that a saying?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It is now. Is that it works with Don't Do a Murder, Holy Crow. It's a whole, it all fits.
Man, she just blew me away though. I mean, both of them. Jackie, just has just gigantic, echoing kind of, I don't know, like fitting for like a hall. And then Sarah's just, I was just, unbelievably professional.
Super pro.
Yeah.
And then Sarah's husband, Ben, plays some bass clarinet and flute on River Styx on the soundtrack as well. We have John Paul playing guitar, and he's a great player. I was impressed. John Paul plays some guitar, Trolls plays some drums, but the trombonist is actually Steve Conrad, who was a programmer at Sierra. I got put in touch with him by Chris Brayman, because I originally asked Chris, and he's saying his chops weren't up for it anymore, but recommended I contact Steve, and he laid down the stems, and he's playing the trombone on the Black Widow. So
that's so cool.
It's pretty fun. Got a lot of great support.
Cool. And then what about you, Eric? Your main instrument is viola and violin, little piano?
Yeah, well, I really started playing piano when I was a kid. That's been my main, I would say. I picked up viola later, and I've played with orchestras here and there, and that kind of thing. It's fun, but it's not something that I pick up very often. I've laid down a lot of violin and viola stems for Error 47's The Soup's On, their 7th guest and 11th hour. I think I played like on 11 or 12 of those songs, some live violin and viola. And then a couple on King's Quest 6 as well. So other than that, I don't play it very often anymore. I should take it out of the case more often than I do, but it's so much easier just to sit down at the keys if I want to play a song,
Yeah. Well, you get, I mean, right now, Paul is, if you don't mind me saying, but Paul is in the middle of putting together his soundtrack for the album, and he's writing all of his own music. So, any kind of track or music related to games is always super fascinating, especially when you're sort of creating something for yourself or editing what somebody else does or whatever.
Yeah. As we go more into the episode, Eric, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, I come from more of like a cinematic background when it comes to music and scoring and things like that. So this will be my first experience doing something for a game. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on the different. It's much more radically different than I ever imagined it would be. Because you don't get to be like, if you're doing a score for something cinematic, you can be like hyper specific. Like really like highlight every little, customize it to exactly what's going on in the scene. Whereas with the game, it's like,
Yeah.
more looking for something universal that can loop over and over and over and over again, and
Mhm.
be, interesting but not stand out and things like that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts too on what you've learned, as far as how games do things versus just I guess anything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We should.
And before we get into all of that, I want to get into the
Mhm.
history of where we each played King's Quest VI, when we started it, and then I just want to start talking about the story. And Eric, you're the guest, so when did you first discover this beautiful game, and what did you think about it when you first played it?
Well, I discovered it because I had just finished playing 5, um, who my neighbor let me borrow and install. I should have bought it. I never actually bought a copy of 5 until I was an adult.
But you have one now.
But I have several, yes. But I loved it. It was really fun. I was just a kid. I was never great at adventure games, so I did use a hint book. But I don't know if I could have gotten through it because there's a lot of weirdness with 5, a lot of moon logic.
Yeah.
I love the game, but I'll never sit here and say it was the best written game ever.
Right.
But but then my friend, who just lived down the road with me, um, he got in, or had another friend who had King's Quest 6, and they were playing it, and he was telling me all about it, and I was like, wow, that sounds ridiculously cool. He's like, there's a genie and there's islands and you have a magic map and you're Alexander and all of this stuff. And I was like, wow, I have to. So um it was my buddy Roy, and we went over to his house and he played it and fired it up, and yeah, I was just completely enthralled and blown away by it. Just it felt the same way I did about 5, a kid of 10 or 11 years old,
Mhm.
and they had a sound card too. I never even had a sound blaster, which is a shame,
Ooh.
until I was like probably 12. So but and I'm funny, oddly enough, my friends who introduced me to it, their names were Robbie, Robbie Greenslade, and Roy Benson. So it was like Robbie Benson, kind
Right.
of, in a way, which I always thought was kind of fun. But
Mhm.
that's how I learned about it, and it's probably in my top 5 adventure games. I would say King's Quest 6 is top 5 for me for sure. So it
And
means
Yeah.
a lot, in other words, to me.
Oh yeah. It's huge. And did you get to chance to play this one when you were younger, or did you have to wait till you were a grown up to play this one, Paul?
I like the way you say grown up.
As if you were one.
I'm a
Yeah, I know.
grown up. I did not. We definitely had the box. I can vividly remember having the blue variant of the box as a kid, and being endlessly fascinated and enthralled with the Minotaur on the cover, I guess you could say. And is that what it is, Minotaur? Right? Is it not?
Mhm.
I said that like I was
Mhm.
editing this, but there'll be none of that. But yeah, okay. So we definitely had the box. I think as a kid, I only played King's. I think I played King's Quest 5, and that's it. As a kid, I don't really know what the deal is there. I guess my dad wasn't maybe so into the fantasy side of things, because there was a lot of like Police Quest and Leisure
Mhm.
Suit and Space Quest growing up, but not a lot of
Mhm.
Quest for Glory or King's Quest. But I did play it properly for the first time like 3 years ago. No
Mm.
walkthrough. I used universal hint system, so I'm not that hardcore. Like I definitely needed a lot of help. But I tried to use the hint system thing instead, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. It was this one was a little tougher for me playing once I was older, and also after being, I think, well, yeah, we had already been doing the podcast and just like immersed in the community, and so you hear so many good things about Six, that it was. And I was maybe expecting too much from it, because everybody was just like, Six is the
Mm.
best of all
Talked it
time.
up so much.
Yeah, it was inflated
Mhm.
so much that when I walked away, but I was like, well, I think I still like four a little bit better. But regardless of ranking or
Mhm.
anything like that, like I had a ton of fun with it, and I just played it again um, this week with my kid. Um, I basically used my like old save games
fun.
so that he could just kind of
Oh,
explore.
really? That's fun.
Yeah, it was a pretty good time. I had to really champion him to get into it, but part of that was I think the fact that okay, I do this technique where I put him in a foot bath when we play these games together, and that's a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, it keeps him sitting there, which is half the battle, but on the other hand, he starts to get a little hot and cranky from the temperature of the water. So it's like a fine balance of those things. But anyway, I would recommend to listeners
Funny.
that if you want to go about it with your kids, the save game thing worked pretty good because you can essentially let them explore and pick up objects and try and have some fun and just for the sake of exploration and the journey of the
Try
adventure.
out all the islands.
Exactly, yeah, like
Exactly.
wander, navigate, but then it's like the second you get to a puzzle that's gonna be difficult and you feel like maybe you're losing them a little bit, then you can just load a save game, that starts right
Mhm.
after that. And I would actually add my save games now that I'm thinking about it, didn't actually work, so I had to get save games from Sierra Help. But anyway, it all worked out. We just kind of enjoyed it in like a 2-3 hour span of like more of like a cozy little interactive story than stressing the puzzles. And so both times
Yeah.
through, I really enjoyed it.
Do you remember which ending you did? The short or the long version?
I definitely got the full complete ending where both families are
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
Nice.
But it tells you, right? You
'Cause-
you showed me the screenshot too, or we were sharing that because it's like, there's more to it. Why don't you go back and try the other way, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. If you get the ultimate score, you get a little card at the end that's
Mhm.
like, hey, there's an easy. It tells you kind of in oddly good detail from a
Mhm.
developer to a player, where it's just like, hey, yeah, I'll read it right here. I got it here. It's like, congratulations on your excellent performance. If you want to go beyond and get beyond the ultimate score, we recommend that you try the other easier entrance to the castle. You can do so by restoring. I cropped the picture too much, but basically by restoring a point just before the druids storm, don't go back
Mhm.
Mhm.
and see the druids. Instead, head to the castle. So I thought that was cool. Sierra
Yeah.
put
Yep.
that in there as a way of saying like, hey, this is a lot of work. Please go see all of it, which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
It's I and props to Sierra for doing that. It was
Yeah.
really cool. I think it's
Mhm.
just something that may have developed a little later. I'm taking a wild stab in the dark here, but it almost seems like it's a second thought they had. And like, well, this could just be we have this dress. We could
Yeah.
sneak into the castle and make an alternate ending. I've done it a couple times. It's absolutely much shorter, and
Mhm.
you miss quite a
It's the
bit,
only
but
one I did
it's
when I was a
still cool.
kid, man.
Hmm.
I didn't even
Mhm.
know there was a longer ending until I was older because I
Oh
was like,
wow.
that's the end. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Came up on
Well,
you.
no.
But so I played this game when I was a kid. I played it right after it came out, and I liked 5, and I thought it was pretty. I liked 6. I loved the whimsicality of it as a kid. The dwarfs. It was pretty straightforward for figuring out the puzzles. I understood how the book worked. I didn't have any kind of a walkthrough to complete the game, but like I said, I never did experience the full game until I was older because of that. So, I could have played it more, obviously, when I was younger. But no, I liked it. And then this time, when playing it through, I kept soft locking myself and missing things. But
Mhm.
eventually, I made it.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a
Nice.
lot of messages from Anna this week. She's like, "Oh, and I'm locked out again." It's like, "Yeah, you're hardcore playing this old school style, though." Full respect to that. Before I forget, too, I should say that this time around, I wish I knew this on my first proper playthrough because I think I'm talking to 2 fellow parents, so it's like that when you're doing something with your kid, like part of you is, I guess, trying to invest them in what you're doing, so you lose a little of your own immersion. So I do wish I had done
Mhm.
this on my own last time, but yesterday we went through the goodness. I'm going to forget the technical name. The companion that comes in the box of
Mhm.
the something Green Isles. What
Oh, right. Yeah, the
Oh, the
book.
dangling
Mhm.
participle?
it's the
Is
the
it the dangling? Is that what you're talking about? The dangling
Or
participle?
the brown book.
the
Do you mean
brown
the
book.
rectangular book? Yeah, the brown book. The one that just comes in the box.
Yes, exactly. The
The
guide
guidebook
to the
to the
Green
Green
Isles.
Isles. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I really
Huh.
overcomplicated it.
I
So
think I probably wasn't even understanding what was being talked about. Sorry.
no, that's fair. That's
Oh, that's okay. Just the instruction book that comes with the game, but it's the thing that has all the information you need to finish the puzzles
Oh,
and figure them out yourself.
I was thinking, yeah, different universe. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm like a total pro at confusing people. It's kind of my hobby, I think. My accidental to take
Oh yeah, you put the two of us together, it's something, man. Good. I mean, I'm glad you're here. You're brave.
making sense for everybody
But for
listening.
sure.
But I learned. Okay, so sorry. I'll back up real quick and say that. So I read that with my kid last night, and that God, that makes a huge
Mhm.
difference. And thank you to Trolls too, because it
Mhm.
was through his advice that I even did that. And
Hmm.
it's so well done. I didn't know till this morning that it was actually written by Jane Jensen, because it says Derek
Yep.
Karalovagan
Mhm.
or something. So I had no idea he was just like a framing device character or whatever, and that it was actually Jane that wrote it. So that also made a lot more sense, because she's just a pro writer, literally. Um,
Hmm.
but I would say, I guess, to anybody listening who hasn't played the
She,
game, if you're gonna play it, definitely read that first. It sets up a lot.
yeah, she's absolutely a major reason why 6 is kind of set apart in my mind. Like,
Mhm.
it's just her writing just added so much. And she wrote a lot of things for Sierra in paper form. I actually reminded her one time, hey, you wrote like the hint book to Gabriel Knight, or at least the prologue. And she's like, I don't remember doing
Hmm.
that, but I showed it to her and it was like right there. And she's like, oh, okay, well, okay.
Oh, I think a lot of the little lines in the game that add character, like later on when he's reading out the poems near the end of the game, and then you get this like little message of "Zounds, that sounds serious," and it's like these little flavor text bits that just pop out that make the game very human, considering like the wondrous nature of it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it almost seemed like Roberta's. I guess I would say, as a critique, and the harshest I'll be on her is saying that Roberta tended to go a little light on character development, like on
Right.
Sure.
helping you understand how the character really felt, and to me, that is
Mhm.
the giant difference between King's Quest 6 and the rest of them. That Jane stepped in and just gave, like, I mean, just the whole scene where you showed Death, the King of the Dead, like himself in the mirror, and it was
Mm.
just that chunk of dialogue is just like masterfully written. Like, it's very, very clearly
Mhm.
like there's a professional writer on board this time, guys. It's not just like a surface collection of like more tropey things. It's a whole nother dimension of complexity.
Oh yeah, completely.
So
It definitely shows.
so let's start reviewing the game. I mean, what happens is
All right.
there you are, Alexander, which, by the way, is the name of my middle son. Is that related? Maybe, maybe not. Let's just say, for the sake of this episode, it is, because that's more fun. But, anyways, Alexander is on the beach, and you're there, and you're alone, and you pretty much have nothing except for the ring to identify who you are, because you were just in a shipwreck, and a little bit of money, but not very much, not enough to do much with it. And that's where we start the game.
Well, I'll just get us started
Mhm.
by saying my initial thoughts was that the ring was conveniently detailed, right? Like, I spent a long time arguing with myself and my son in the game. I'm like, would the ring really say all that? Like Prince Alexander of Daventry, like all on the ring, like. But it started an interesting conversation of just thinking of how things might have been back in the day, and like you couldn't just easily duplicate or have something like that made, let's say, when this time frame happened. So I started actually coming around on it, like maybe they did do that, like, and I still can't historically disprove it or anything, but anyway, we both kind of thought it was convenient, if not a little bit funny, when he has to prove who he is. His ring happened to like have his name and where he's from engraved on it. I like
Good point. Yeah.
that. Okay, so what did you guys do first? Do you go to the castle first, or do you go to the town first?
Well, I always went to the town first, but I realized as I looked through, random guides and hint books and watching playthroughs of other people playing the game, it seems like most people would start off at the castle. But I always just
Mhm.
saw that town and was intrigued and just went that way right off the bat as a kid.
Same here. And it wasn't until this playthrough that I went to the castle first for the first time. I've never gone to the
Hmm.
castle first on any other playthrough. Totally. It's the town. Towns are exciting. Castles are all like,
Hmm.
you can't come in here.
Right. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, we've had a lot of castles by the time you get to King's Quest 6, so it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I like the way they handled that too, in the sense that you can get the backstory on what's been going on at the island, like what happened to Casima's parents. You can get that through like the pedestrian, the just the people in town, or you can have it from God, I'm blanking on his name, from the bad guy, from going into the castle.
Hazard.
Thank you. Yeah. But I thought that was kind of cool, and that right then and there kind of set the tone that this game was going to be a lot more, or a lot less linear, I guess you could say too. Because if you go to the castle after the town, right, you don't get the kind of more exposition dump that you would go if you went there first. And it's just kind of cool. It's like King's Quest kind of grew up in a sense, where it's like, oh, okay, this is, they've accounted for everything here. You don't just get told that all over again as you might have in the past. So yeah, I really like that too. Interesting.
It's very non-linear. I mean, right from the second screen of the game, here you have two options, and the whole thing is like that. You're bouncing all over islands throughout the entire game. It's not parts of it are linear because they have to be, but nothing's stopping you from going to the wrong island 4 times until you finally get to the right one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and nothing's stopping you from like gratuitously trying to give all of your inventory items to everybody and finding out that that's not always a good idea, because you can just trade the wrong stuff for the wrong stuff, or you can, if you give the ring away, as I found out, to the bird too early, you can't prove to Jolo that you're of any use to anything, and then the whole long ending of the game is entirely impossible. But you don't, there's a lot of like, I figured this out in hindsight in this game, right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have in mind, because I was just thinking, our praise of Jane and the writing and how things drastically improved. Let's say on a writing aspect with this game, the puzzles remained pretty Roberta-y throughout this game too.
Sure, there's a lot of those, but I mean, going back to what Anna just said, like, how cool is it though that if you were to do that and give the ring away too soon, you weren't going to be completely unable to. Like, for instance, in King's Quest V, you buy a pie and you eat it, and now you can't even kill the Yeti, like 90% farther into the game, and suddenly you can't progress. Whereas with 6, at least you still could have completed it, the short ending.
Yeah. Which I wouldn't have known as a kid, that I gave the ring away at the wrong time, because I wouldn't have done the longer ending, and like I wouldn't have even found like the thread in the dress or any of those other things necessarily. There's so much of this game that is open to discovery. I think Conquest of Longbow was a little bit like that, because Conquest of Camelot was very formulaic. You had to do things in a very specific timeline. But by the time Longbow was out there, it was all like wide worlds of open. But it's a bit of a learning experience to even understand how to code that kind of stuff.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's great. Good writing.
Yeah, absolutely. A quick question too for you, both of you guys. I'll go with Eric first. But when you originally played it, did you play the floppy or the CD first?
Floppy is what we had, or my friend had, and I did get a copy of that game, and it was floppy. But I tell you what, as soon as the day that my dad brought home our CD-ROM drive and Sound Blaster, I immediately went out and bought the CD version and played it all over again, and fell in love again. Because there's a lot more content in the CD version as well. Longer intros,
Yeah. Yeah, the intros are that's something in itself. There's so many different versions of that intro. If you go down the nerd hole on that, my goodness, like almost every different port had a different take on that and everything. But Anna, what about you? Did you play the CD first or floppy?
Floppy, and I didn't have a Sound Blaster or anything fancy back then either. I didn't even hear the music for a lot of these games till well later at the time where it was really tricky to get the games to play due to compatibility issues. So it's like some things I literally missed out on until closer to probably Windows XP.
Right. Right, that's fair. That's fair. Yes. Well, mine obviously just being a few years ago was CD, but I'll say that yesterday was the first time I put in the specifically the Windows version of the CD.
Oh, you played the Windows? Yeah, it is different.
It's the portraits are a bit haunting, right? They're a little too detailed. They're just
That's what I think. They don't really match the backgrounds as well, and they kind of stick out a little too much to me. They're beautiful, but a little distracting. I like the pure DOS version myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly right. It's almost a bit jarring how just how much they pop out, how much more detailed they are, I guess you could say.
How did you address that in your game, Paul? Like, because you don't always have to do things in the exact same order either, although it's a timeline, mixed up into days. But is it tricky to make a game allow you to pick when you want to do things?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. Because as soon as you pose that to me, I'm like, it feels all accidental now that it's mostly done. Like I don't know. I guess the idea for me was always make sure there's at least two things to do at any given time, right? Like you don't want to ever leave the player where there's only one way to progress things, because then that's I feel like that's how you get really just railroaded or kind of boxed in, like or just stuck or demotivated, I guess you could say. So I think it just branches off from that. It's like start with the idea that they should always have they should always have more than one thing they can be doing at any given time, and then I think it kind of naturally creates branching paths from there.
Cool. Yeah. I'm very excited to play your game, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I do have it wish listed.
Awesome. No, thank you. I appreciate that. We're doing beta testing right now, and it's it's been super fun. Actually, I was gonna say earlier when you guys were mentioning giving stuff away in this game and it not going well. There is a part in the beta test where you give something to somebody. I'm going to be vague on purpose, but a few of the testers struggled with that, and then as you guys were talking, I'm like, is that a Sierra thing? Were we taught not to give stuff away, or you might not get it back?
Mhm.
It's true. Yeah, it's actually, that's very, very true. Like we have to hoard. And if you do give something away, you have to save it first, because you might just be messing yourself over so bad. If the reaction you get is, oh, thanks, that might be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I remember as a kid, I definitely ate the pie because pies are delicious, and you're like excited that he actually eats it, and you get the line, just naively excited about it. And then I remember Laura Bow or Dagger of Amon-Ra getting bit by that again by eating the dang sandwich. Hopefully, I'd saved it by then.
But I was hungry. So you get to meet some cool characters right off the bat, whether you go into the castle or you go into the town, because you've got the pawn shop. There's a guy selling lamps. You've got a library, a bookstore, a mysterious lady picking roses with a very grumpy stepmother kind of attitude, and a ferryman. So lots of cool stuff. And not to mention like scary creatures with shiny eyes or shining eye.
Right.
Elusive.
So how did you make this? You took the beginning of the game and sort of created a theme for it. I'm assuming you didn't just like follow all the music as it happened. You kind of had to create situations in your record, because situations happen when you're in a place, but it's not necessarily sewn together in the game. How did you adapt that?
Well, you keep asking me questions about 6, and I'm answering immediately about 5. But to go back to 5 again, being a more linear game, I definitely did that one where it was pretty sequential from beginning to end. Like this is basically the next song that 90% of people playing the game through would have heard next. Whereas, yes, with 6, I did that a little bit to the best of my ability on the soundtrack. We took the castle route first, and then we go in the castle to see Alhazred, and then the town, and then Beauty, and then the docks, and then the ferryman. So it kind of progresses that way naturally. But in playing the game in real life, you're going to hear the town theme 30 times, but obviously it's only once on the album type of thing. So, and I just try to lay it out however it would, the normal path of that island would have progressed, if you will, is the closest I could get it.
Right.
So
that makes sense, right? So it's like you almost have to make the first choice for everybody, and then from there it kind of has a natural flow to it, right?
Yeah. Pick a path already.
Right.
And just don't let it lead you to a dead end, because a lot of the stuff in the beginning is pretty logical, and then the lamp seller, by the time you actually get a lamp, he's gone. You're like, what the hell, there was a lamp guy here, I've got a lamp.
Yep.
Did you guys have like one specific puzzle that just really really got you, really stumped you? For me, it was throwing the tomato, because the bloody bump on a log doesn't have an arm. He doesn't. You don't see he has hands. So I never really assumed he'd be a candidate for throwing something.
That's a good point. Yeah, a little bit moony there.
I had trouble.
No, I want to hear yours. Go ahead, Anna. I'm still trying to think of mine.
That's I just, the thing I had the trouble with was the random items appearing in the garden, because I forgot that was a thing that happens. Why would I need to go back to the garden? I don't need anything there. And twice they do it, once on the chair and once on the table. So I'm like, oh, I guess the garden is kind of the random place. So that and the getting out of the fire, like understanding to cast the rain spell.
Right.
And understanding like that he's going to automatically use the clothes, but you can't really click on anything. So like it does it at the end of the game too. Like if you don't have what you need, the scene is going to play through, but you're going to die. If you do have what you need, the scene is going to play through, but you're going to live. But at first I'm terrified. I had everything I need, but I'm like, I still can't click on anything.
Right.
Because I didn't realize that you're kind of not necessarily controlling it.
Yeah. You know, I can't. So I'm confident that it was me and my friends who were playing it all together. And I'm thinking we probably had a hint book as well, just because we were the type of kids we grew up in the country, right? It's not like a computer is the only thing we had to do. They were the best part of our childhoods, but at the same time, there was a lot to do outside a lot of the time. So we weren't always glued to our boxes. So we wanted to make the most of our time, and we were usually just trying to get through a game. And it wasn't about solving the puzzles. My friend Roy's mom was big into adventure games as well, and she was the type who would spend a couple of weeks playing Laura Bow, for example, and that was her jam. But we just wanted to get through them. So I don't remember getting really stuck on anything. Whereas with 5, again, here I go again, answering questions about King's Quest 6 with a King's Quest 5 answer. I didn't have a hint book because it was just me doing it until later when I needed one, because I wasn't that great again. But the puzzles, probably the maze puzzle, the catacomb, or not the catacombs at 5, it's the
desert.
What do they call that? No, where you're under the castle. Under Murat's castle.
Yeah.
That was confusing
dungeon,
to me.
I guess, but yeah.
Yeah,
Catacomb.
the dungeon.
Yeah,
I did.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna validate Eric quickly. We used a ton of hint books as a kid. I think my dad was definitely more enjoy the story. Like, do your best, but don't let it frustrate you either. Like, better to progress than to remain, to turn on the game and start getting angry at it. So
yeah, totally. There ain't no shame.
To answer
exactly.
None at all. No, to answer your question too, the only other trouble I had is, my head of iceberg defrosted, and I had this like puddle of water, and I couldn't do anything with it. And it's like, you can't pick one up because you already have one, and you can't put it down because you don't actually have it. It's already melted. It's a puddle of water. So I'm stuck with this random glitch, and no matter what I did, it wouldn't help. So I looked up online what to do with it. And the internet said, sometimes if you glitch in a game, try clicking an inventory object that's glitching on a different inventory object. So I did that, and boom, it worked. The water disappeared out of my inventory, and I was able to pick up another lettuce head.
That's crazy.
What? That is so cool. I've never heard of that. What did you click it on? Do you remember? Or did it matter what you clicked it on?
I don't think it mattered. I just clicked it on. I think it was the scarf. Like that was left from the chess piece. And I'm just like, okay, and then it disappeared. I thought I was totally a game bug.
It's things like that why beta testing is going so well for me right now, because Anna can find like any bug out there. I think it's insane.
She knows.
Yeah, she's still finding bugs in King's Quest. She found a bug in the old Beavis and Butthead game. It's impressive.
I did. That's right. I forgot about that one. Jeez. But yeah, otherwise it was a pretty well behaved game, except for me messing up the order of operations. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, timeline wise, so we've covered that you can go to town and go to castle. We got past that. Your next stage is like gathering spells, and as our mutual notes say, the gathering of spells and allies, which is maybe generous, but it's I don't know if is there anything really here, because I feel like the real next thing is heading to the island.
You got to get that magic map, and the thing is,
right.
Once you trade in with the shopkeeper, like, because you're kind of trading up with the stuff that you have, and he's like, the map is super valuable. You're like, well, my ring is super valuable. He's like, yeah, but do you want this or not? And you have to like actually trade some of your really valuable items, and it's really important to understand that you don't lose them permanently if you play your cards right.
Right. The shop guy's like, well, your ring has your name on it. We'd have to smelt it down to gold. It's a pretty highly customized ring. I don't know if we're interested. Uh,
But yeah, a lot
Which
of
is
just
fair.
self-exploration.
all right. So yeah, you get the map. But no, thank you, Anna, for setting that up, because that is like a crucial kind of checking in point with the pawn shop, with the pawn shop owner, to keep progressing, especially to find the thing for each island, I guess. That, like the token item that you'll need for each one. But you head to Island of Wonder, and now I'm losing confidence just well because it's
You wouldn't go to Wonder next, because you can't get past the guards. You're not ready for Wonder yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
You
I
need
would
to
go
check
to.
out.
You at least need to go to Sacred Mountain to get the stink flower, and while you're there, might as well grab the feather.
Okay.
But because you'll need the flower for Isle of Wonder anyway. But yeah, because you can go to Wonder, but as soon as you go one screen in either direction, you're going to get thrown in the ocean by the guards.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm geeking out.
No, I
You
appreciate it. Yeah.
can you can do the clam like how I did it last time. Is I went to the Island of Wonder first, and I just did the clam with the boring book.
Yeah, you can do
And
the
then
oysters. Yep.
I left the island of the oyster. Sorry. Then I left the Isle of Wonder. Oh, and went off and then retrieved the other items. And there is a lot of that. And I mean, you have to do it in adventure games. It's like, oh, what do you know? This item is randomly sitting here. Why? How convenient.
Right. The classic, like when there's a specific object that's just like a little brighter than the rest of them. I love that. Like we're gonna need that.
Yeah, unless you're in the jail cell in King's Quest V and you don't know that you're supposed to get the cheese with the fish hook because you can't see it. All you see is a mouse hole. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Some things stick out, but other things, it's
Yeah.
funny what you're supposed to like know just what to click on, as if anyone would actually do that type of thing sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Yes.
Which is
but they do a good job with it too. It's like I think they've always Sierra's done a fairly good job at kind of adding a little more contrast to an item when it is supposed to be interacted with, so it does stick out a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's how I cheated. I played all of these games, and I'm like, oh, I didn't use hint books. I'm so awesome for all these point and click games. But like, I had the technique where I would take every inventory item or every cursor and click every single square millimeter of the screen in a grid-like pattern, all the way from the top to the bottom, and then side to side anytime I was stuck. And that would always and then you click everything on everything and everything on everybody. And that was sort of how you broke down the system of the game. And often I'd even miss storyline because I was so focused on just like the pattern of getting through things.
It was
And then you'd end up giving the ring to Cosima, and
Yes.
then you're
Right.
soft locked. Yeah,
right. Yeah, hence all the soft locks. Yeah.
Very much. Even now, as a grown up, when I played the game a few times before, I'm still doing it. Again, grown up with quotation marks around it, but still.
I can picture you as you go like it's so systematic. Your eyes like glaze over like a horse sleeping standing up.
That's exactly it. So yeah, you go to all the islands and you're essentially gathering all of these bits and pieces, because at this point, all you can really do is deal with these like random dwarf type characters, which are amazing because each one of them is based on one of the 5 senses. So all you have to do is fool one sense at a time.
Right. Yeah, I almost looked at it playing it this week or explaining it to my kid, for better or worse, because I don't know how right I was, but it felt like you kind of go to each aisle and stir things up, and then just and then go and then leave, and you just kind of get stuff started, get the ball rolling here, and then go over there, cause a little trouble, and then and it just seemed like a good way to keep things moving, where you kind of stir the pot a little bit, and then leave, go to the next aisle, and see what that might have affected over there. But here,
yeah, good way of putting it.
Why, thank you. I got lucky, yeah. That surprised me. Okay, so we can start to try and take us a little bit aisle through aisle. Isle of the Sacred Mountain, if that's where we go first. So that's where the Cliffs of Logic is. And I want to ask both of you guys, am I missing something? But okay, so I know it's the copyright portion of the game, but isn't it the same answer every time? Like, it seems like bad copyright protection, because I thought it felt like you could just remember or write down what the answer was, and then give your friend the thing, and
Yes.
Oh,
That is
you mean,
true.
yeah,
Like
the answer is the
ascend
same. I thought you
or
were saying,
Mhm.
yeah, I thought you were saying the word was the same, like every one of them you have to do ascend or something, but no, yeah, they're all the same. So I memorized it as a kid. It was pretty easy
Wow.
Yeah, I
after playing it
still
a
know
couple
all of
times.
them. I didn't have to look
Mhm.
any of that stuff up. I'm just like, yep, this is the buttons you push. And I forgot the order sometimes, but then you just mess around a bit and you have it.
So am I
It's
missing
like the
something, or is
catacomb.
it as ineffective as it kind of seems as far as copyright? Because like you could write it down and then you have your answer, and then you could just give it to a
Mhm.
friend if you were gonna do that.
Yep.
Yeah, whereas at least with 5, everyone was different, so you had to have, like,
Yeah.
every
Right.
single, symbol written out in its
Yeah.
corresponding letter, but yeah, with 6, you could memorize it, so yeah, good point. Mhm.
Yeah, it just seemed almost odd, an odd oversight
Yeah.
on maybe on their behalf because they put so much effort into the Cliffs of Logic, and it's very obviously the copyright thing, and it's like it's a big gaping hole in the logic as far as theft was concerned. But anyway, okay, so the Cliffs of Logic is
And
oh, go
I
ahead.
think Cliffs of Logic last a little longer than they probably should have. They could have taken a couple of
Mhm.
Yeah,
vertical screens out of
Mhm.
that. It was pretty
yeah,
long.
yeah, good call.
I'm just so was worried that they'd make you do it a second time because they take you and if you don't
Yeah,
have everything, they wing you back down to the bottom. And I'm like, no.
yeah. And
But
in the
it's okay.
soundtrack, I only did, like, I think 30 seconds of that, like a couple of screens worth, and then we're at the top because I'm like, people are gonna hate hearing this stupid dun 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 over and over again. So, but
But yeah, you can
yeah,
pretty
good
much do
point.
this with any timing. The Cliffs of Logic. You can go up there for your first time whenever you want. You don't have to be
Yeah,
ready for it. In fact, it's better to get it out of the way sooner rather than later so you don't have to deal with it.
yeah, because then all they're gonna do is ask if you're ready to go in the catacombs, and you can just say no. Well,
Right.
he will say no
And
if you
then
don't have
you,
the items already. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And then in this scenario, when you get to the top, because for the listeners who haven't played it, so the genie is well, it might be too late for the listeners who haven't played, but but basically whatever. The genie he's around, he's trying to lure you into situations. You can pretty easily spot it's him because
Mhm.
of the gleam in the eyes. So when you get to the top here, he's offering you fruit from a special bush that'll help you make you fly or whatever. I'm just wondering if anybody like actually uh, took the fruit and ate it. Besides to see the death, right? Like, did anybody actually not see through exactly what was happening
Oh,
in that
like, hey,
scenario?
I'd love to
No.
fly.
Right.
No, the gleam was the indicator.
Yeah. He didn't fool me on that one for sure. But
It's like walking into the Rusalka's arms in Quest for Glory 4. It's like, damn, you're beautiful, but I have a feeling this might
mhm,
not be a good idea.
mhm.
So where would you guys go next, aisle wise? Because assuming we're not ready for the catacombs, because we can kind of circle back to that when it comes to facing off with the Minotaur. But yeah, where would you go next as far as aisles?
Well, I guess the only ones we haven't talked about yet are Beast and Mist, and
Beast.
Mhm.
we'll circle back to the catacombs. But how about I guess we'd go to Beast with a
Yeah,
dangling.
see
Now we
what
get to
we
talk
can
about the
do.
dangling participle.
It's our favorite
Since I brought
word.
that- I don't even know if I'm saying it right. You're probably going to
You
get
are.
comments that I'm
Yeah, no,
mispronouncing
you're
it.
good.
No, I'm probably saying it the Canadian way if Anna agrees with me.
That does
Okay.
happen. You should hear how we say the word color. It has a U in there and everything. It's crazy.
Or that or that one of the Sierra companies is also named after a blender.
Right. The Dynamix. It's my
Yep.
favorite blender.
I
But yeah, I love a beast, I guess.
We're a couple
Hmm.
hundred podcast episodes in, and just recently I realized that Anna says "bin" like bean, and it's adorable. You can't
Oh yeah, and
unnotice it.
Well,
again,
there's two E's in it.
Maybe bean there.
Bean? How else would you say it? Been there, done that. So yeah, you have to cool down the water in the Isle of the Beast because right away you've got this like
Mhm.
bubbling swamp of like boiling stuff. And so your first thought is, how the heck am I going to get that? And if you're able to fool all of the dwarves, because you have to give Tasty Dwarf a mint and you have to give Eerie Dwarf a nightingale sound, and you have to give the Touchy Dwarf a rabbit's foot, and you have to give this smelly dwarf the stinky flower, and then last you have the vision dwarf. But fortunately for you, you've got like this invisible ink. There's nothing in the bottle, so obviously if you pour it on yourself, you disappear. But if you've done all of those things, you have the potential to get an ice cabbage. Now, okay, I just have to stop and say it's funny. My husband's sitting on the couch while I'm playing it, and I'm giving him like the rundown of the storyline. Like, oh, I just made the swamp water cooler with the frozen head of lettuce, and he's like, okay. And like the things I kept saying to him about the game were getting so outlandish by, because the game just kind of goes out there like that. And I'm like, oh, the chess pieces are happy. And he's like, why? I'm like, oh, because they have a piece of coal now each, but they don't know which one's better anyways. And he's like, oh, is that all? I'm like, oh man, it's a whole thing if you don't give everybody a piece of coal. So he's just sitting on the couch going, this is the most ridiculous thing. Like, where is even the logic to play it? But I'm like, no, it's there. If you're sitting in front of it, it's there.
He's like, wow, please get sober.
That was exactly. My kid liked it too, but he liked it he liked the whimsical characters, and he liked the garden, and he liked the deaths. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite songs in the game, actually, is the Dance with the Wallflowers that Alexander plays with his piccolo or flute.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's one of the few I can actually sit down and play on the piano too. It's really fun to play.
Ooh, it's beautiful too. It's all on those minor chords, right? And it just hits those like such satisfying spots.
Speaking of soundtrack stuff, is there anything in the soundtrack, in the score that has percussion to it?
Oh, there's tons of it. Yeah, especially with Chris Brayman. Yeah. So even where we were just talking about, one of my favorite percussion parts is in the Minty Cave at the top of the mountain. Okay. There's a lot of really cool orchestral percussion stuff going on there. And there's drum kits like in Dance of the Bones, where the skeletons dance around and you grab their keys. And then
that one's so funny.
Also the Black Widow, there's a really cool drum part. And Trolls actually played the drum covers for each of those for us on the soundtrack as well.
Very cool.
So yeah, there's a lot of percussion, really good percussion. And there's cowbell. Where is there cowbell? I think that is in Black Widow. So it's probably one of the only King's Quest games that has cowbell in it. So bonus.
That's kind of neat. Did you have to like figure out what each of the instruments were? I mean, I know a lot of them you can auditorily just figure it out, but was there a little bit about like, how did they do this that you had to figure out?
The MIDI data that is available and that's all been exported from the game files is actually pretty descriptive.
Wow.
And there are some things that are a little hard to decipher. So I would just load up the MIDI and then listen to the song and try to pick out what was what if it wasn't labeled correctly. And then there's a whole entire process, apply the samples and then try to find a good one and then set up all your key switching and all the automation. There's a lot to it. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, doing 60 songs.
Yeah.
Takes quite a while. So
I feel like whenever I don't know what an instrument is in scores, it's always the bassoon.
Yeah, that can be a tricky one. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, it's that bassoon.
It's again. A low clarinet-y thing.
Yeah, I still haven't really articulated it to myself. I should do that one day just so I can start being sure of it. But let me ask you too, when it came to the music, did you mess around with any MT32 emulation, for better or worse, or in the spirit of more remastering, was that not of interest?
So if I did anything, it was the sound canvas for this one.
Right.
And yes, I absolutely used some authentic and actual sound canvas samples in the game, because some of the stuff I had just was not a good fit or a good match. I'm trying to think of what I used it in.
And while you're thinking, I'm going to sidetrack it with another question. Okay. I eventually, I think I stopped my subscription for the Roland service that I can't think of the name of now. But did they ever end up adding MT32 to their little plugins?
I haven't looked because I knew about them and their sample packs. And I knew that if I ever needed to go that route, I have the hardware, but I tried and tried and tried. I'm just not apparently good enough at my digital audio workstation software to know how to do it, but I could not get my SC88 to interface and actually do anything. So
Right.
I just went and bought it, and I didn't want to do their subscription because I just wanted one product. So when I was looking, the only time I've ever looked, I've only been looking for sound canvas. I didn't look to see if they had an MT32 or not. So
Right.
I bet they do though, because they had a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I haven't looked in years, like in at least 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would just kind of more want to play with it as opposed to like implement it in what I'm doing. But yeah, just be kind of fun too, because I do have a physical one, but it's just I don't know, it's just a pain in the ass, I guess, to put it simply,
It
because
is.
I'm so used to
Yeah,
I'm so spoiled with plugins and like half
I
of what I
know.
do is with Arturia or Native Instruments or something like that, where it's just so much
Mhm.
easier. Just it's up.
What do
So
you use for a DAW?
I use Logic Pro for DAW.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, what about you?
I use Ableton, and it has its issues. It was throwing me a lot of grief, doing exports of my stems and things like that. But I found workarounds. We got it done.
Is that is
I think it's just whatever you learn and whatever I don't want to invest a bunch of time in relearning a whole new DAW, so I just kind of stick with it because it's what I know now.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was about to say. Was it? Is that the one you learned on then? Because that's exactly why I'm more or less stuck with Logic. Because I just, like you said, exactly. Like I just know it, and I don't want to do, another at least 20 hours probably to get just surface familiar with another DAW.
Yeah, and I actually learned on Cubase, but and that was a really early version of Cubase too. But I ended up switching to Ableton once I started doing music again.
Yeah, sometimes I get jealous would be the wrong word, but yeah, I guess I almost wish in the sense that I was more familiar with or started with Ableton, just because it's more. I don't know. It's more universal. Like if you're really stuck, like the advice is usually if you're on Ableton, and I'm like, damn it.
But Pro is super popular too. I honestly have felt the same way about. Oh man, of course they're using Logic Pro. Everybody uses Logic Pro.
I get okay. So it is just a perception thing. Like when you're stuck in a hole, and
Yeah,
it's just it feels like everything's
for
against
everybody
you,
else.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Okay, sorry, rabbit hole again.
Right? Yeah. And a post out of the music hole. Where are we?
Where are we now? We've just defrosted a head of lettuce in some hot
Of course.
swampiness
Right.
just to get to the other side, get a teapot that's hanging in the air, and then you've got like the dude with the glinty eyes saying, "It's okay to walk past the archer that's like aiming at you wherever you move. You're fine. Just like do it. Go get her."
Great song, by the way. That's one of my favorite songs from the game. Is The Gardener.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I might have actually fallen for that one. I remember getting shot by that arrow for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Too, yeah. And the way Anna just described it made it, it sounded like the fruit bush scenario where it's like nobody's ever going to do that. But I did get shot by the arrow. I'm wondering if that was like a save and to see the death situation, but I don't think it was.
But now that I think about it, maybe we should have stayed on the mountain because you have to do the catacombs before you can do the beast to get the shield.
Right. No,
So-
you were going to leave. We're essentially, we're going to stay out here. We're going to see the glinty eye. We're going to realize we can't go anywhere. So we still don't have
There
the
you go.
dangling participle. Yeah. And we're going to back out of this place and figure out how we can, probably going to pop back over to the world of wonder now that we've calmed that down. And, you're going to open up the gate, maybe talk to the chess people and figure out how to get the hole in the wall.
Okay,
Mhm.
I've got a positive and a negative for the maze catacomb thing, and then I'm going to throw a question to you guys. So my positive is that I usually detest mazes, and which is a pretty unoriginal
Mhm.
statement to make, right? Like I think we're all pretty
What?
much
Everybody loves mazes, Paul.
So we're all aware of like the they take up a lot of time.
And
or
we're
like,
all aware that you hate mazes because you say it like every episode.
That's fair. So I will say I really like this maze. Well, okay, let me pedal that back. I don't really like it, but I I didn't hate this maze because a lot of the rooms are quite alive. Like there's it felt like there's a lot going on. It's not just like dead end after dead end and just brick wall. Like there's actually a lot of I might be misrepresenting, but it felt like there was a lot of ways to die and a lot of ways to, which again I do see as a plus for the most part. But dying in these games, I do enjoy it. So that being a plus, and so that would be my positive is that this maze is a lot more fun than they usually are. And then my negative, and this is what I want to hear from you guys since you played it in your youth, whereas I didn't. Now, granted, I didn't have any spoilers. But when I first saw the Minotaur, did you guys have like a wah 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 moment? Like, oh my god, he's so small.
You thought he would have been bigger. I
Yeah.
thought it was going to be bigger. So disappointed.
I don't think I've ever heard that before. Those words in that order. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Nice.
I feel like I remember feeling the same way. And I remember you saying this on your prior episode about King's Quest 2, how you felt that way about the Minotaur. And I was like, yeah, I kind of remember. Because like, he's so huge on the box. You're completely right. You were expecting... And all they would... I think the what could have improved that would have just been the perception. Because if they put the camera view like behind the Minotaur instead of like just this, generic side view of the room like you get from any other room, that could have completely done it. Make him huge because you're seeing him from the back, and you'd still see Lady Celeste being tied up and all that stuff. It could have just been all done with perspective, but I get it. Budget limitations, time constraints. They probably just made it basic, trimmed it down. But yes, I remember that, feeling that way.
Okay, oh yeah, because you wouldn't have been able to do that because you have to get the brick from next to the path where the arrow guy shoots you, where the Cupid shoots you, to be able to deal with the room in the maze where the ceiling is coming down on you.
Right.
So you have to be able to throw that brick into
There's
there.
That.
Oh, and Lady Celeste, I remember when I saved her, she didn't seem too impressed. She's just like, saving me, huh? Great.
Wait till you experience that again, but realizing that it's Ralph Wiggum's voice. It really, it's a total mindfuck.
I did not catch that. I did not catch that at all. That's amazing. It's like, okay, the shopkeeper of the pawn shop, he is the voice of Rakesh's son, the magic seller in Quest for Glory 5.
Oh, cool.
I totally heard it, and I'm like, oh my god, where is this taking me? I'm like, oh, that's because I love the voice work.
I need to replay that. I need to replay 5 now. That's awesome.
Oh, do that, because 5 was just, I mean, people kept getting weird on it because of the graphics and things, but it is just one of the most amazing tie it together series stories that I've ever played. It's so good.
I always describe the late 80s as kind of Sierra's awkward teenager years. I mean, let's be honest. Whose game companies wasn't it that time for, though? If that's probably a horrible way of phrasing that question, but like technology was just so awkward in general around that time,
They did it first. Like somebody had to be the forerunner of the industry, and Sierra were like the first to start this weird looking 3D stuff. They were, and that's the trouble with being the first. When you look at a company like LucasArts, who can kind of just walk in and say, "Oh man, it's a good thing we're learning from their mistakes," but somebody has to like make all of those initial mistakes, and then you end up with like a game like Outpost, for example, Sierra's game that I was meant to be quite an amazing feat, but ended up being one of the most disappointing games in their catalog, like ever.
Sure. Yeah, it was definitely a different time.
Yeah, I think you're onto something, Eric. With the way you ordered it with the hardware, like the technology, it seemed like people didn't know like really unsure of like what their customers actually owned as far as like hardware limitations, and like nobody knew exactly what move to take first or when, and
I was an avid gamer when I was a kid, but I never knew that I would ever need a 3D accelerator, for example. We always bought computers, they never had them, but because it just wasn't a thing. But just everything changes, and that was definitely an abrupt change to the scene, and we saw the effects of it for sure. And somebody, like Anna was saying, somebody had to be the guinea pig, and Ken Williams kind of always gravitated towards that, right? He always wanted to be cutting edge.
Right.
He talks about that a lot. So
right. And it's funny you say that too, Eric, with the 3D accelerators and stuff, because I'm still like, it was just like 5 years ago that I really finally understood like GPUs, and I guess part of that is the games that I liked were always adventure games, and then by the year like 2000-ish, like I early on committed to Mac as far as making music was concerned, and so Mac has never been like a GPU type of situation like at all. So it's just recently I'm like, I should sit down and just Google what the hell a GPU is, and it was I learned a lot. It was kind of shocking. I had no idea that graphics were being handled like in its own little basically CPU situation, and I still don't really get it, as you can hear.
That's what that's what I still love, I guess, about my Amiga computers, because there's the architecture on that is so amazing. Okay, sorry, another rabbit hole here, but it's
Please.
every purpose has its own standalone dedicated chip. Like there's a music chip and there's a graphics chip, and they all work independently, yet all together to bring you this amazing for its time architecture that kind of blew everything else out of the water, because
Yeah.
they just did it differently instead of trying to cram every single task into a single thread 16 megahertz SX386, you know what I mean, and then experiencing lag because of it. But
That is
yep,
interesting. We don't hear a lot of Amiga love
Mm-mm.
on the show, and it's just which is odd because they were, I don't know, they're almost, I don't know,
well,
better at doing what Mac tried to do than Mac was at the time. You know, as far as like a luxury
sure,
type of feel to
at
their
the time,
graphics.
yeah,
And
especially the
Yeah.
graphics, yeah, for sure. It was way beyond its time for being released in like the late 80s, 87, I think.
Oh man, it's
And it
true.
was pretty spectacular. It's probably my second favorite next to my DOS systems. I like
Hmm.
Amiga. And it's funny too because it's also an American company, but they were way more popular in Europe than they were in
Hmm.
America. So I don't
weird.
know. Go figure.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had an Amiga computer, and they had one game on it because it was a business computer, and it was that Mousetrap game.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think it
Oh,
was
never
even
played it.
vaguely related to Sierra, but yeah, it took me years and years to find it. And I guess the reason I didn't is it was a primarily Amiga thing. Have you ever played that, Paul? I heard you kind of recognize it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've played it or I can just mentally picture screenshots of it. I think it's the
Hmm.
latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it was I was obsessed with that game. Every time I went to her house, I'm just like, "Can we please play the mouse game?" And she's like, "Oh my god, if you need to." And then it's like her dad would sit with me and play the game instead because she's like, "I don't care. This is just a stupid computer game, right?"
Right. Aw.
Good. So, okay, we've kind of jumped around a little bit. And I think in the nature of this game, this is exactly how we should be doing this because this game does the exact same thing. It jumps around, but you do have to make sure to have the scarf from the chess piece, the ones that I mentioned, we're
Hmm.
arguing about the coal, before you go to the catacombs, because for one of the most straightforward logical puzzles in the whole game, you entice the Minotaur to his death with a red scarf.
Who would have thunk?
It's what I like that though. I like it when it's one of those, oh, of course. And you don't even really need to think about it. Just like, oh, what's in my inventory that makes sense? Oh, red. Right. Got
Yep.
it. We're good.
Yep.
But there's a few little things you need. You need to get a skull because obviously, where are you going to put ashes if you don't have a skull? And you're going to need to get a shield because obviously, how do you get past arrows if you don't have a shield? So there's little things you do need to
Mm.
pick up. You do need to make sure you have a tinderbox too.
And the 2 coins
Mm-hmm.
before you leave. Like that, I bouncing off of what Paul had mentioned earlier, the positives and negatives of the catacombs. That's probably my number one negative is
Yeah.
the 2 coins. Because if you don't go left at that one particular spot, because most of the time you would just go right. I don't know. It was a little offshoot side. You have to go out of your way to get these.
Right.
Mhm.
And if you don't happen to stumble across the screen, then well, you're not progressing. That's probably one negative about the catacombs, but
Yeah, because my way of handling catacombs when I don't use walkthroughs is every time I get to a arcing space, I'd make a new save that would say, I've done down, next time go left. And then I'll just keep going in that
Mhm.
same direction all the way. And if where I go progresses the story, I note it. And then I restore back and I go a different way. Because you kind of, in a game like this, you don't have a choice but to check all the directions out or you're going to get so screwed over. So it's a lot of save
Well,
files.
the cool thing too about, and I don't know how many people actually know this, but the guidebook of the Green Isles actually has a map of the catacombs in
Mhm.
the book. You don't need the hint book for the map. Just the game manual has a. It's it doesn't literally say here's a map of the catacombs. It's like some background art on a couple of the pages. But
Oh my
Mhm.
if you
god.
happen to stumble
I
across
saw
it, it's
that
there.
and I didn't realize it was a real. I thought it was just kind of
I
made up to
didn't
give you the
either.
idea of
No,
the
that's an actual
catacomb.
map of it. And one page
Dude,
is the top level, and the other page is a lower level.
I know exactly what you mean because I
Wow.
have whenever I play these games, I always put the box next to me and I use the original books because I don't know, it's like this whole vibe. I'm kind of obsessed with it. So I was doing that and I still didn't make that connection.
Well, I just learned about that like probably a year or so ago, so don't feel bad, but I just wanted to share it with you.
Hmm.
Man, that is mind blowing. This is why I'm bad at adventure games. It can be right in front of my face, and I'm just like, dude, I have no connection to that. Wow. This was 2 nights ago.
I did, and I looked at it and I thought, I wonder, but then I just dismissed the thought and said, nah, they wouldn't give it away in the
Like,
book.
oh
And
wow,
I
that
just
looks like this maze I'm stuck in right now. Anyway.
Moving on.
That's exactly it. So you've done that, and then okay, whether or not you're on the catacombs, at some point you've got a dangling participle. And what's cool about this guy is you have to give him to the caterpillar in the book stack because that's where he lives, so you can get a rare book. Which again is not one of those say it out loud, and it sounds whimsically foolish, but it is quite
Right.
fun.
The rare book.
It's got a big R on the front, so you know it's the rare one.
Yeah. I wonder who does his voice. Do we have credits on who did the bookworm voice?
Let's see.
He reminds me of
Yes.
my friend's mom who introduced me to the game actually. Just the way he talks. I thought it was hilarious.
Let's see.
Darn, it's
Bookworm.
not on my short list here. Unless the worm has a name.
There it is. Yeah, it's the same
No, I think it's
person,
just a book.
Chuck McCann. He did Jolo, Bump on a Log, Woof, and the
Okay.
Bookworm.
Okay, so that's Duckworth.
Okay, there you go. That makes sense. Awesome.
I've just pulled up the wiki fandom, and I just want to give a shout out in the middle of this episode to Rudy Merchant, who runs the Sierra Chest.
Completely.
I can't even begin to say
Yeah.
how many times it has been there for us on these episodes, whether it's screenshots, walkthroughs, rundowns, background information, like just an amazing catalog of absolutely everything to do with all of our favorite games. And he continues to add more games all the time. So, the Sierra Chest in Facebook is a place to just find it if you want a little bit more of the background information. But thank you, Rudy, for cataloging everything we love and helping our podcast.
Is that how you say his
I
last
love
name?
Rudy. He's so great. I always
think
said
it is.
Marchant, but I could be wrong.
Oh.
Yeah, I always said
I
Marchand.
feel so uncultured. I'm like,
yeah.
merchant.
Could be. It's like me trying to read out the Patreon names. It's just, you get what you get, man. I'm trying my best. So, okay, you've
Yeah, he's
gotten
been
past
very
the dwarves.
I mean, a lot of this
Go ahead.
is really invaluable on his site. So
Yeah.
it's really, really a valuable resource to the community.
Yeah, like I think, you can go out there and buy him a cup of coffee or, hit him up and throw him a couple of bucks because it's, you want to keep this stuff going, and there's still games he hasn't cataloged yet. And he's getting into the nitty gritty of some games that we haven't had a lot of information about. So it's coolness watching this progress in the gaming world. I love it.
Yeah. You're here. All
So,
right.
yeah, here we are. We're back to the game. We're in the garden. We've play a flute. We've got a hole in the wall. We've talked to chess pieces. We've gotten a frozen cabbage, and we did the bump on the log throwing things. You talked about that, getting the milk bottle from the milkweed bush and giving it to the little baby cabbages that look like Cabbage Patch doll heads so that they cry so that you can have their tears is also very important, obviously.
Super metal too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is just like, oh, they seem to be jealous.
breath,
Ah, here, let me.
All right. So I'm sorry. I was just having a moment thinking about just how different it's almost odd well, okay, not that exact example because it is pretty metal, but just how whimsical it goes, and then for the same game that has the Land of the Dead in it, right? It's such an interesting contrast in a way.
I love the horse. And I mean, all of this is only possible because you've traded this rare book for a spell book. And within the spell book, it tells you how to gather ingredients to do things like make rain or, do these, tame a creature of the underworld, as usual spell books would. But so it's kind of a neat setup because you gather the items you want and then you click it'll turn into the talk cursor on top of the incantation and you can say the spell. And if you don't have everything together, it's just like, what are you doing? But if you do have everything together, it can preemptively cast a spell so that it can come in to be used a little bit later on. It's kind of a cool mechanic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or you have to have the whole teapot ready, but you can't manually cast it. You just need it ready before you go to mists type of thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Let's see.
yeah, the spells were a cool part. I often wished there were additional pages that just had ingredients that you couldn't obtain in the game, just for some added flair, and you
Yeah.
never really knew which spells you were supposed
Right.
to be working on. But I realized that would have just been additional writing. But
It's
they were
kind of
pretty
neat
cool
because
spells.
the spells were like an homage to King's Quest III, and then like the
Yep.
little boy in the Land of the Dead that you had to help was almost like an homage to King's Quest IV. And I could just see this little undercurrent
Mhm.
of all of her other games blending into this new game, and it was really neat how she weaved it all into there.
hmm There's a little bit of that happens with the music as well.
Mhm.
If you think about it, like the bookworm song on Isle of Wonder is the same theme that you hear when you pick up the dangling participle or when you land on Isle of Beast,
Wow.
because it
Mhm.
ties those two characters together. So Chris did a little bit of that as well throughout, for sure. And there's the
That's
overall underlying theme as well. But yeah.
that's quite cinematic in a sense, right? That
hmm
customization we were speaking of earlier, where it's like the ability to have somewhat of a character theme or reoccurring theme to tie ideas together. That's beginning to help me, I guess shape and understand your praise behind Chris. Not that I ever doubted it, but to
hmm
articulate and better understand exactly what he did that was special. Because yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah.
I can think of anything that comes close to comparison with something like that in a game, something that quite cinematic.
Yeah.
But
He's
I'd
pretty
agree.
awesome.
Do you know? Did he do the music for King's Quest VII, or was it somebody else? Or
Nope.
somebody else, wasn't it?
It was somebody else. I
Mhm.
cannot come up with a name off of the top of my head. Let me look.
I
Because I
don't
had,
recall it doing the same kind of weaving in 7 that they've done in 6.
yeah. I'd have to. I'm pretty sure it's a guy that we had one of the video interviews with for when we were doing my King's Quest
Hmm.
V campaign. Wasn't
Right.
it? Were you on that one? I don't. Maybe you weren't.
I
I'm
think I
trying
don't
to
know.
look it up.
I was on a video with you at some point for King's Quest. So
hmm Anyway, I don't know who did the music for King's Quest VII. I feel, you know, like I
it's okay.
should know
That's what I
that.
get for asking questions live on air. That's all right. You've heard it happen on the show. Now hear it happen in real life.
now it's happening to you. Well, let me ask something so you would know offhand. Okay, I tried to
Oh,
transition.
there it
I've never
is.
been a good
Neil
transitioner.
Grandstaff, Dan
Neil
Keeler,
Grandstaff.
Jay
Yep, that's him.
Usher, and Mark Siebert. They all kind of teamed up and
Yep.
worked on it
And
together.
Dan Keller did some in 6 as well.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Neil Grandstaff. Yep. He's the guy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Who did King's Quest V? Was that
That was
Ah,
Ken Allen and Mark Siebert.
okay?
yeah.
Okay. What would you, Eric? What would you say would be like some of the bigger differences between the two, between 5 and 6's soundtracks, like musical styles and all that?
Well, I think 5 is more of, it was very thematic, excellent writing. It was just more like a classical style, whereas 6 also is, but there's a lot more jazz element thrown into it as well. Like
Interesting.
not as much classical structure to it. Maybe is a good way of putting it. So it's
Gotcha.
just a
Hmm.
different style. It's like literally listening to, you got your Beethoven and you got your Chopin. You know what I mean? They're
Right.
just two
Hmm.
different people, two different composers. You're going to get something different. But you can hear, if you know like what you're listening for, like you can, like I can at least like lower a bow, for example. I can listen to those songs and be like, well, that's Chris Bremen, obviously,
Hmm.
because just the way he does percussion for one thing is just so unique, and that's always been one of my weak points actually in music production is the whole percussion side of things. I usually
Hmm.
rely on people who are actually good at it, like trolls and such, to do percussion things for me, or other people who have helped me with other like King's Chill 3 tracks. I think Brandon
Hmm.
Bloom did the percussion on one of my songs on that. Which is coming out after King's Quest 6, by the way.
Oh,
But
Ooh.
cool.
yeah, it's just a whole different writing style, and um, yeah, Just good
I
stuff.
I love, okay, say for example when you're giving an item to the dwarves and they're all coming up to you and you have to give them each their thing. The way that Bremen builds suspense, that you have to,
Mm-hmm.
you better pull out your inventory item quick before Buddy like starts sniffing or you're gonna die. And the way that
Yep.
he does that, you can feel it inside your body. You're like, oh my god,
Mm.
I'm worried I'm not even gonna get to the inventory fast enough. This is a big deal. Like, my god, does he ever put you in your place with those scenes? He is so good at building the suspense.
Yeah, completely. It's definitely his strength, and that's always probably something that I've been like the worst at. If somebody like, because I've written a few things here and there over the years, but just things I've jotted down. I've never been able to like write a scene for a movie or a game or a specific thing that's going on. I could try, but it's just never. I don't have that gift, and Chris definitely does. I think probably better than a lot of the other Sierra composers. Not to say that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and we all do music differently, right? That just happens to be his strong point, in my opinion, is the ability to match the mood and just write a theme for it.
Now
And
I'm
it
going to
also
take,
blows my mind, like how much, if I might just continue down this rabbit hole path, like how little time the composers were given to write these pieces, like during the production of these games. Ken Allen was telling me when they were working on 5, they had like 2 or 3 weeks to write
Oh my god.
50 to 60 songs for an entire
what?
game, and I'm like, how in the world would
Paul,
you
you're
do
taking
that?
too long to do yours already. My god, man.
Dude, it takes me 2 or 3 weeks to remember how my doll works. Like, for real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just crazy, but that's just the level of genius of these people, and it's been such an honor to work on their stuff, to say the least. So
We have gone to all of the places and we talked about spells and we went and, okay, I absolutely loved Charming the Nightmare Horse. I thought that that was kind of, and the way that they described it was really good because they did a similar thing with the unicorn in King's Quest IV, where it is obeying you and it's acting like it's your friend, but it's actually forced to do through the magic of, either Cupid's arrow or a spell. And they really captured that idea really well with the winged creature here.
hmm and this is one of the only song. Well, there are probably most of them, but I think it would be amiss not to mention the or the nightmare theme, because it's
Yeah.
absolutely probably one of the top 5 pieces of the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
So well written, so beautiful. The clarinet, oh my god.
Yeah.
I love that song. Every time I listen to it, even still, I get goosebumps.
I love a good clarinet. We actually, I'm now singing in a community choir, and one of the main instruments we have along, and she actually comes to the rehearsals too, as the lady with the clarinet, and it just makes everything so relaxing. Everybody just chills 15% down as soon as the clarinet starts playing.
Oh, I like
It's
that.
so good. It has to be one of my favorite instruments. It's just, I love woodwinds in general. Maybe because I can't make a single note on them, they just intrigue me so much. But
I feel that.
I'll
Same.
spend all day on a clarinet stem on any given song just to make it as perfect as I can. And it's absolutely vital to these King's Quest soundtracks because it's used so widely,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have the same fascination for the same reason. Yeah, they've always been a little too slobbery for me. I can't handle reeds. I don't want wet
Yeah,
wood. There's something about like
I
wet
know.
wood that just I can't do it.
At least
That's
with metal,
probably a
like
part
brass
of it.
instruments, there's some antimicrobial there, but wood, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Mhm. I always thought of reeds or something, down on the water. But no, my mom was a clarinet player back in the day, and she started getting like a red underline under her lip from the pressure, and it looked like bruising. And so her family had her stop playing it for cosmetic reasons.
Oh wow.
Golly.
It was a
Yeah.
That's
different time.
It really,
What
oh
comes to
man,
mind?
it sure was.
Madam, you forget
Sorry,
yourself.
you're too pretty to be doing that now, darling. You best be stopping. So, but that's fine. But yeah, you get to go to this like nightmare place, and you better have saved your game, because if you're not prepared and anything in there brushes up against you, you die instantly, which happened to me when I forgot. And I just jumped up there and was like, oh, oops, dead.
I'm just going to walk across this screen now. We'll be fine. But this is a little bit of probably the part you may have connected with the most, being all the ghosts around, huh, Paul?
Yeah, it literally was too. I was thinking it was the music, but maybe maybe that's what was going on there. Okay, I've got a question that's bugging me. I can tell I won't be able to let it go, so I got to pedal us back a few minutes, and I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I'm against progress, but I'm curious, Eric, what you think about the percussion that's in this, because frankly, the reason I'm obsessing on it is I'm trying to wrap my head around where percussion, let's say, belongs in specifically game music, because I have it
Mhm.
categorized pretty well. Let's say cinematically, or for like just scoring in general, but for games okay, I guess I could further reduce it down to I was under the impression that you just don't do it because of loops, and you don't
Mm.
want to create I don't know, maybe let's say the a level of energy that percussion can kind of give the listener, and therefore you can't really sustain that energy. Like you don't want them tapping their leg to a beat, let's say, for 4 hours, or you're going to wear them out, or
Mm.
exhaust them. But now, even though I heard that off the bat, like rule of thumb, stay away from it in games. But ever since I've heard that, I can't help but notice it popping up in all kinds of games, from King's Quest 6 to Thimbleweed Park, for example. Like it does seem to be in games. So I'm just wondering what your observations or thoughts on percussion in games are.
Wow, that's a loaded question. So let's dissect this a little bit, if I might
Yeah.
geek out a
Mhm.
minute. A couple of things that
Please.
come to mind when you say the word percussion. That's a pretty vague term. I mean, are we talking
Fair.
drum kit, or are we talking
Hmm.
ambience, like in Minty Cave? Like it can. I think it's vital, and it's interesting that you're asking me this as well, because I again do not at all by any means consider myself an expert of the topic, because yeah, it's just I've always written the same way. I've never really written percussion stems or tracks for anything. It's and occasionally I'll throw in like some tambourine here and there, but it's after working on Chris's music, it's really opened up my mind a lot to it. So you can listen to what I'm talking about. Like if you have some time later in the soundtracks, like there's the Minty Cave part, and is one thing that sticks into my mind. And Sacred Mountain,
Okay.
how he uses the percussion in like an ambience background sort of way, and it's bongos and shakers and sticks and things like that, just little backgroundy things. And then I'm also thinking about the percussion in the last track, where they're in the castle behind the walls and the secret passageways, like where all the yellowy colored rooms are there. And then also percussion in the treasure room in the castle, where you find all of the stolen artifacts from the other island that he had stolen and then framed each other about.
Right.
That room, like that, like ambient background sort of percussion, I think could be really fitting. That all of that stuff looped, and but then I think about another, going completely outside of Sierra here, because we're not talking specifically Sierra.
Yeah.
Something like every single one of the Kyrandia games
Yeah.
all have this looping soundtrack that just plays, and it changes depending on the world or the region you're in the game.
Okay.
But that same repeating theme, and those songs are all just like this, kind of jazzy, kind of loose sounding theme that just repeats over and over, and it's nice. It's background, but then if we break out even farther, I think about things like Super Mario Brothers 1. Like there's percussion in that main theme the entire way throughout, like the main Mario theme, you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Mhm.
definitely usable. It just depends on how you want to use it and how you can best fit the game mood, I think would be what I would say about it. But again, that's from me. I'm certainly no percussion expert. You should probably ask Trolls.
Right.
He's amazing at the art.
Well, I think
But
part of the reason I come to you is, I mean, besides, and while I appreciate your humbleness, that you're an extremely talented musician, and on top of that, you spent so much time studying these works, right? Like the amount of hours that you put into these remasters that
sure.
you've been doing, right? So it's like you spent more time than anybody I could imagine studying what these guys are doing. But your answer is extremely helpful, because your examples with Minty Cave and Sacred Mountain, and then just because I feel I feel bad and I need to say it. If you heard me typing, I was taking notes, not listening.
Okay.
As far as what to actually listen to when we hang up. So yeah, when you mentioned Minty Cave and specifically Sacred Mountain, with like the bongos, like that's exactly what I need to explore more. And I guess the reason
Mhm.
the motivation behind asking is because I write better when I can have just some sort of percussion beyond, and
Mhm.
obviously we can keep timing. Let's say with like a pluck string, I guess you could
Anything.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just I like the flavor that let's say bongos for a good example would bring, something kind of raw and nature that's not drum tracky, but is still a consistent rhythm. And
Yeah.
I think I'm almost looking for permission to do it, but more so looking for examples to where it's done and it's handled correctly and it's not done in a way that wears the listener out, wears the player out.
Well, and you got to
Mhm.
match the style too. Like you can't just throw um, a timpani in a drum kit and expect it to sound like your kick. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like every drum has its own purpose and every percussion instrument. So I think I've just been enlightened so much. I didn't even know what half this stuff was. There's a lot of washboard too in King's Quest. You know what that is? Like where it sounds like the sound, and
Oh,
you
literally.
drag the stick up and down the washboard type of
Right.
thing. There's a lot in 5 and 6. So that type of thing, but that can keep like a percussion rhythmy type of thing going.
Right.
You just got to match the song, I think, with the theme. So
Interesting. Okay. And when soundtracks come up, I think on the pod in general, one of the I think I tend to mention Thimbleweed, and then the other one I tend to mention is, as far as really admiring it, is Neverhood. And I just briefly the
mhm.
other day I played like
Mhm.
10 minutes of Neverhood with my kid, and I just had this mind blowing moment of like, oh my god, there's straight up drum tracks in every single one of these songs, and
Yeah, that's a fun soundtrack for
right,
sure.
yeah, I think it's Terry
Kind of
Scott Taylor.
bluegrassy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's really out there too and very imaginative. But yeah, just hearing that back the other day, I'm like, oh wait, I never felt fatigued. Let's say listening to the Neverhood
Hmm.
soundtrack, it's one of my favorites, and there's constant beats in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I appreciate that, especially the examples. I'll check those out
Well, good
specifically.
luck to you, sir, in your ventures, because it's not my strong suit either.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll let you know exactly how it turns out. I don't.
For sure.
I'm trying to do like a synthy. I know I want to do like a I don't know, like if you imagine like a VHS kind of aesthetic, the audible
Hmm.
version of that. So I want to keep it pretty synthetic, pretty like kind of 80s, and so I'm not looking to do like some driving drum tracks like Police Quest 2's intro. Like I don't,
Mhm.
I'm not asking that of the player to put up with that
Mhm.
for 4 hours, but I do. I guess I want to define the line as far as exactly what I can get away with and yeah, stuff like that.
Sure.
Very cool. Okay. All right. Sorry, Ann. I'm all done.
Don't apologize. I love this stuff. Getting into the nerdy nitty gritty is the reason I wanted to do any of this in the first place, because I'm like absolutely addicted to other people's passion. I really am, and my passion is other people's passion. So when I hear you, Eric, talking about your project and the music, and I hear you, Paul, talking about the game, I feel like so much energy coming from that conversation. So this is entirely selfishly motivated by me.
I'm sure, Anna. Yeah. You're the only one benefiting from this.
Puppeteer in the background.
Making it all happen. That's what I'm here for. So yeah, now so where are we? We've met up in the realm of the dead. Have we accomplished what we need to accomplish there yet?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. No, not quite yet. So
The next screen is the Spirit Mother. Once you make it past the ghosts who will kill you.
right.
That's a really cool song too.
Mhm.
And that's another one that ties back. It ties back to the castle, where you're locked up in that dungeon, because it's the sun. That's where you find the sun, and that same exact theme plays again when you see the Spirit Mother.
Oh,
Mhm.
cool.
So
That's so
it's
cool.
kind of I think it's cool because it creates like a subconscious
I
for the
was
player.
just gonna
You know what I
say that,
mean?
man.
Yeah.
Literally those
Oh my
exact
God.
words. Yeah.
Paul and
Uh-huh.
I have been talking about this subject for the last couple days, like literally exactly this.
Yeah.
So this just
Uh-huh.
fits so beautifully.
The word subconscious comes up a lot too when we've been talking about it. We're
Mhm.
trying to trigger that exact kind of subconscious response of like, yeah, you don't
Mhm.
realize why it feels good in a sense or why it
Mhm.
Mhm.
connects. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we've got the parents here. I thought it was a little. I don't know. It's just like a kind of basically a stupid note, but I thought it was and maybe I missed something too, but it seemed kind of almost humorous that the mother ghost keeps saying that the husband won't find rest, but like she doesn't really say why she's still there. She's
The
like, he,
90s. It's
yeah.
like watching Mrs. Doubtfire over and over. Like there's this doesn't quite align with what's going on today anymore. But
That's a
Yes.
good one. I haven't
Yes, so
rewatched
well
that
put.
one since nowadays. I'm gonna have to do that now.
well, you're the one who brought up Robin Williams. I mean,
Yeah,
That's
I,
true.
it's a
yeah,
must.
that's fair. Oh my god! All right, so you get the parents are like, "Hey, you gotta, okay." So I'm the last person that should probably be explaining specifically. Well, I guess anything, but 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 more specifically, this exact part of the game. But so okay, the parents. Alexander offers to bring the parents back to the land of the living. There we go. I'll offer that as a olive branch / jumping off point.
Mhm.
I say you go, Anna, because you just play this, and it's been a minute for me. I've just been doing the music.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny too because you're like, "Are you her parents?" And then her mom just like looks exactly like her, and she's got the same headscarf in the same way, and the way that they tied it all together actually worked really well.
Mhm. Yeah,
I thought,
another tie back.
but yeah, no, and then
Turns out this is just a forgettable part of the game. I think
yeah,
you're
Not
kind
too
of
much
blanking
yet.
out a little bit on.
But then the next screen is the
Yeah,
death gate, and that was
next.
cool because
yes, I like
I
this
didn't
part.
I didn't have to have a separate track for the death song because it was just built into the game. You get to go to the spot where you've probably seen 100 times before already
Right.
and play that part. I don't know of any other Sierra game that did that either, but I haven't played all of them either, so I'm probably wrong. But I thought that was a really cool writing idea. Like,
Yeah.
we're going here, you get to see what happens when you actually die, and now you get to manipulate the screen, you know.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, that
and
was
then you
really
might as
cool.
well throw in this random like song. And I do have a funny story about the screen actually as well regarding the music. Is there's the song we all know when the skeletons start dancing. It's a funny little island um, song that is a little bit fitting, but a little bit not. It just kind of stands out.
Right.
But it's a million times better than what the speak. Going back again to another prior topic, the Amiga port of this game, and Trolls always claims that this is my favorite song ever, which he's being facetious, but it's so bad. Oh god, if we can find it somehow, maybe you can just like add a little blurb of it playing here. It has nothing to do whatsoever with the original song. I don't even know who wrote it or why. It was probably just one of those random songs that they picked from a pool that people wrote songs and they didn't have a destination yet. And
Mhm.
somehow it landed in this Amiga port, and it's just god awful. It's bad. Trolls keeps trying to get me to like include a version of it somehow on my soundtrack, and I'm like, I'll think about it. You really
Maybe.
want people to hate this, you know what I mean? But
Whoops, we ran out of space. Dang.
yeah. No, that's that's where it would go in the game. I don't have any extra seconds on that side of the vinyl, so I do have that going for me.
Phew. That was a close one. Yeah.
Um, Funny little
That's
side
great.
note.
Because, yeah, this is kind of where you get to start making the choice, isn't it? If you want to do the longer ending or the shorter ending, is right after you leave the realm of the dead and they kind of send you back down. Because the end of the game is deceivingly longer than you think. You think, oh, yeah, I'm
There's
here and it's getting close to the end. But it's like, no, dude, there's like another hour left in the game, really,
the
depending on your
castle's
order.
a big part of it. Yeah, and
Hmm.
again, the castle side of the vinyl because of that is the longest by far. And
Yeah.
but it's a big part of it. But we're still in Realm of the Dead though. So
Yeah, you have to
after
go to the Styx River, right? Get some
yep,
good old water.
River Styx, and hopefully you picked up the cup from the garden in the Isle of Wonder for your
And the
River Styx water
coins.
and the coins.
Hmm.
Yeah. But it's this is the song that Ben Kelly played on
Nice.
Cool.
his bass clarinet and flute. So it turned out really nice. So
Hmm. Yeah, I really like that. As I said, when I was listening to your soundtrack, and I'm going to reiterate it, it really is. You lay down and you close your eyes and you are playing the game through the music. And that's really the wonder of what you're doing with recreating these. Because it's the same with King's Quest V. That final is it's beautiful, and the record itself and the art is beautiful. But it really does. It takes you right there. And it's like such a low effort, feel good. Like for me,
Yeah.
a lot of this I played as a kid. So you're getting these little dopamine hits as you're passing through different
Right.
areas of the game through your auditory senses. It's really quite a treat. I can see why you would really want to do this, because there is nothing else like it out there, just to be able to hear it all sewn together.
It's
Well,
like
I'm glad it worked. That was my intention, so I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
it's almost like the I would say it's almost exactly the opposite of the memes that are like, yeah, I bet you can hear this picture. And I feel like the music is like, I bet you can see this sound in a sense.
Yeah.
When you listen to your
Yeah.
music, you can see exactly what it's going along to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I like that. So yeah, you got to go down there and you have to go to the Lord of the Death and get an audience. And the Lord of Death, and this is what you mentioned briefly earlier, Paul, is this is really kind of an emotional scene. There's a lot happening and a lot more depth that you'd think. And then it's so poignant and almost
It is.
sad.
It is. Even the look on his face is it's not a dramatic shift in facial expression, but it's just enough to feel kind of haunting. Where you're just like, oh god, that poor guy. Like you feel sympathy for him in that moment in a strange kind of way when they mention how there's no coming back from the blackness that he exists in, and it's just it's really quite
The
heavy.
guy's just there trying to do his job. And like,
Right.
he's the most hated person in the whole world. He's like the tax man, you know?
Right.
I didn't ask for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if we're going to go from here and you're going to go for the ending with the maximum points, you've done the whole thing with going to the beach, teleporting to the Isle of the Crown, doing all the stuff with the Nightingale, but you have to now go to the castle and do this like spell. And instead of just dressing up as one of the servants, you have to get into there in an alternative method by drawing a door, which I love stuff like that. Draw a door on the wall and it becomes a thing. I mean, you played around with a little bit of that in your game, even in the very first day, as kind of drawing a portal with chalk and it leads to someplace else. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you first started saying that, and I guess momentarily forgot that I did do something like that because I was like, yeah, I really like that too. You should do something with that one day.
That's amazing. But yeah, I mean, this game is such an original game. It can take you right out of reality and put you right into the wonder that is the land of the Green Isles. So I get it, man. So yeah, you're in the castle and there's a lot of left and right and watching for guards and really paying attention to like who's coming from where, and you're saving it all the time because you have kind of a maze. You've got to get through, you got to get to the visor's room, you've got to go to the treasury, and there's all these little quests and things you have to do in order all along the way. And the whole time you're hoping that you paid attention during a cutscene earlier when it showed you what type of lamp you're supposed to trade at the old lamp seller so that it matches the lamp that the genie is from, because if you don't do that properly, again, you can't finish the game.
Always wait as long as possible to, do random little things that seem like they don't quite fit in, I guess, because, good point.
Great advice. Yeah, that's very good advice. I'm not sure I would have never thought of it that way. That's very good advice. Wait as long as possible, right? Because you never know when you'll gather the information. Well, two quick notes on what you said there, Anna. One is that this is the part of the game where my saves go from like well articulated notes to myself to like BFFFBG because I just smashed the keyboard. I'm just like,
Well, you think you're almost at the end of the game, but it turns out, like I said, there's actually a lot more happening within these just few rooms, and there's a lot of dialogue and things that you have to do. So,
Yeah, the castle's amazing.
what the hell is my second? Why did I say two things? Oh yeah, the other one is okay. This is something that Trolls had brought up that I'm not sure I would have thought of, and I'm wondering if either of you two had thought of it. But he really took issue, and granted, I'm getting this from one of his videos on it, which he leans in heavily for fun. Let's say
Mhm.
also as part of the shtick. We all know. But that being said, he had a good point, and I'm not sure I would have noticed it as like, let's say, a critic. But he said that he really didn't like the genie lamp thing because Alexander wouldn't have known, from Alexander's point of view, he wouldn't have known what lamp to pick.
Exactly.
I'm just wondering, do you
could
guys
not
notice
have.
stuff like that in games? Like I don't. I mean, I hopefully do when I'm designing, but like as a player, I'm not sure I really actually noticed that to
You're
that
right, because the
degree.
only place that we would have seen it as the player would have been on the cutscene where the genie is drunk on the mint leaf and passes
Exactly.
out, and it's on a Hazard's table there.
Mhm.
Yeah, good point. It would have just been random luck happenstance. So yeah, it's a good critique.
Yeah, I never would have noticed in detail. Now that you've said it, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. Like, how could he have even seen that? Obviously, it makes tons of sense. But no, up until you said it, not a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that's good. It's good to know. And again, that was Trolls' observation, not mine. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
more in the unison of yeah, I think it sounds like we would all kind of miss stuff like that, which is why I'd be a terrible critic, basically. But yeah, I like liking stuff,
But it's good too. This is satisfying because you finally, after showing Saladin the letter that you have, you can talk to Cosima for the first time in person and not have to talk via a bird. So that's really satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when you talk through the brick in the wall, yes, yes. And another piece of little shtick I'll steal from a YouTuber is Pushing Up Roses made a comment that made me laugh out loud. She's like, "Man, sucks that hole wasn't lower for both of them."
Wow.
Wow. You go, girl. Yeah, then it could have been smaller too, I guess. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's good. It's quite a dig on Alexander there.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Well, as long as his name isn't Connor, we're fine.
There
Yes.
you go. Touche.
Gotcha. Okay, I won't get into that whole side of things. But yeah, no, this is a big deal. Like for this ending, you've got to literally battle. You've got to get him back into his bottle and do like an epic sword battle. Now, the music for the sword battle is pretty epic, right?
Yeah, I think so. That was one of my favorite parts to work on for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some more percussion for you.
Oh,
Yeah.
noted. Okay, literally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sword battle.
Because you're pretty much at your last end, and I don't even know if you're gonna win. But luckily, if you played your cards right, Cosima is gonna come on in and pretty badass the whole situation with the dagger. So
Yep.
Yeah, we mentioned I think last episode, or maybe it was the episode with Daniel where we were just saying how adventure games have always been very positive and very good to females. And I think I was saying something along the lines of like, you would almost think that back in like even as far as the 90s that it was just like, I don't know, patriarchal and like women never had any, but it's like adventure games always seem to have represented women really well, and this was yet another shining example of that, where she almost Elena Marley in a sense, like actually saves the day. Like it's not quite as in Monkey Island, like Elena really is the hero, let's say, who kind of saves Guybrush while he's trying to save her, but in this case it's she more or less handles the situation, which is cool.
and the game goes at like there's a whole bunch of possible endings, and it's all depending on what you did. Like for example, if you don't give the ring to Cosima, she won't be wearing it at the wedding ceremony because you've left it, say, at the pawn shop or somewhere else.
Oh, good detailed notice. Yeah, I've never thought of that.
Very cool.
Just these little, but it's like it's not all of it soft locks. Like I said, if you befriend Jolo and save the queen and the genie, he'll be there and he'll even perform at the wedding. But if you don't do those things, then you still get to finish the game, but he just won't do the big performance at the wedding.
Okay, wait, did you say that weird, or is that how you pronounce it?
It could
Which
be
part?
YOLO, but I called him Jolo.
You're like Jolo or something.
Jolo?
Oh,
Jolo. It's like dynamics.
I feel so
It's
rednecky.
Jolo.
I was like Jalo. Like
you even stuttered a little when you said dynamics. You had to think about how to say that.
I was trying to say
I
it.
love that.
Yeah, it's so hard to change. I called it like, Broder Bund when I was a kid.
Broderbund, yeah.
Yeah, I called it Boder Brund. And it wasn't until
Nice.
very many years later with my own collection that I realized, because like there's a little bit of dyslexia in the family. Like my dad and I both have a tendency to reverse some letters and words around sometimes. And so I think I
Sure.
just did that for a lot of things when I was a kid. I'd mix it up. This is how I see it. This is how it is now. And now I'm too old to change my mind.
There you go. You're set in your ways.
Cool. So yeah, you can do that, or you can do the short ending, which is essentially you're creeping into the hall and you're slightly going in a different direction to get to where you're going, but the end result is the same. You have to show the letter to Saladin, talk to Cosimo, and
Yeah.
it's just you do it with a mirror, and there's not this big epic sword fight in the same way. But then it comes on after. Anyways, it's a bit different, is my point.
Yeah, the short ending, you like everything that we've just talked about since Isle of Mists, like is just not in that version, right? Because that's where you would basically after. Yeah, you just miss the whole realm of the dead. You miss all of it. There's a big chunk that's, and then in the end, there's no one at the wedding really. The parents aren't saved,
No.
because and the only reason there are people there is because now suddenly you've usurped the king, and these people have to trust you out of duty. Whereas the long ending, they all love you. You know what I mean? So all the islands are reunited. Like that doesn't happen in the short ending. Like the short endings, it's cool and it's awesome that the game has that ability and prevents some of the natural soft lucks that would have just built up over time as you progress throughout. I think any adventure game that probably becomes, and I admire people like Paul for creating games like this, because I'm sure that becomes an issue the longer and the more in depth a game gets. But I just appreciate 6 because they kind of saved you a little bit from that happening. Whereas, again, like in earlier King's Quests or even the later ones, if you don't do something, you're just not moving forward, or you can find yourself screwed over pretty badly that you're having to play the entire game over again. Hopefully you have a save, So it's pretty great writing in my opinion. So
Yeah, I agree. And while I fully appreciate that, Eric, thank you. I will say that I basically weaseled out of that by splitting my game up into days. So it's like you only really have to get from the beginning of the day to the end, as opposed to, because it helps me appreciate what they did here in King's Quest all the more, where it's like you have to really orchestrate the entire, like if I had to connect all 7 days with, like in other words, I almost get a cheat in that we can just restart the next day, or it's like, okay, new day, new inventory, new story, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it must be really, really difficult for them to have to maintain like the what would you call it? I guess just the logic, basically. I'm picturing one of those, like the Always Sunny in Philly meme with the red string on the board kind of situation.
But there's so many caveats to all of it, like tiny little details,
God,
like what Anna just said about the ring on Cosima's finger. Like, who thought of that? You know what I mean? Like, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
We have to. The artists can't. There has to be 2 different versions of this scene now. Because of that one thing that could have been different from a small percentage of players.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that, I mean, with beta testing, I think we're always paying attention to and looking at is if you've put in all these extra little things, is anybody even going to see it? And actually, surprisingly enough, different beta testers are definitely doing things different ways.
Yeah, totally. It's vital.
So it's awesome. Yeah. Every single person that plays it sees it from their own point of view and looks at it accordingly. And no 2 people can see anything alike. It is just amazing to watch.
Yeah.
It is so cool.
The beta phase is pretty vital.
So scary.
Big thanks to all the beta testers, by the way. Whoever you are all wonderful.
Yeah, thank you, Jess, because I know she's listening. She's been awesome. She's like trailblazing ahead of everybody else too. So getting the brunt of it. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, Jess. Yeah, Jess is just amazing in general.
Yeah.
That is very true. My Aussie sis.
What ending did you guys okay, not what ending necessarily, but okay, my specific question is, I didn't know, because Eric, you had asked me in the beginning of the episode, and I said I got the one with all the families, but that was in the last playthrough with my kid where like lessons were learned. Let's say the first time, because I had like hints and stuff like that, I did get a very good ending, but I didn't think there'd be a difference between, sorry, and this is what this is all building up to, I didn't think there'd be a difference between giving putting the genie back in the lamp or giving him the mint leaf, and that does affect the ending somewhat, or who shows up there kind of dramatically, right? Like one of the 2 families.
There is a twist there, isn't there? And I don't actually recall what that is. anymore. I'd
Yeah,
have to go
'cause
look that up.
how does it work? Because if you give the mint to him versus in the other way, you just have to put him back in the vial. Right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know what happens.
I'm
I
almost
can't
more wondering
remember.
what the logic is, and I guess now that I'm saying out loud, maybe it's because the mint kind of kills him, like it's not as noble. I guess.
I don't remember, which is weird. I should have played this before the podcast, huh? As a refresher. I'm kind of relying on you guys on this, which is crazy because I played this game so many times. It's just been, I bet it's been 2 or 3 years. Well, probably 3 or 4. Gosh, since I've even done a proper playthrough of it. But
No, and hey, we've
yeah.
made it like what about 2 hours now. We've only come across I think one or two stumps, so that's still impressive.
Mhm.
But no, it's not even. And, what I'm driving at isn't needing to know what it is, but I'm just wondering what the logic would be behind being punished for doing the mint leaf. Like, just on your opinion side for both of you guys, like, would that be because the mint, I guess, kills him? So therefore, you
No,
don't.
the mint doesn't kill him, does it? I thought the mint
It just
just,
makes him
because the mint
drunk and
just always,
uncoordinated. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And then he kind of passes out because he's addicted to the
There's never a
mints.
situation where the genie dies. The
Mhm.
genie never gets harmed or dies in any form of the ending that I'm aware of.
Same.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Huh.
don't know. We'd have to look it
I
up, I
think it's just
guess.
because it's the shorter ending and it's just a part of it's like it's the 20% of the cool ending when you do it that way. So you just don't get as much of the
Oh.
reward. And as such, I mean it shows in the ending scene when a lot of people are missing is like, okay, you've done it and it's okay, but just know I think that's sort of the way that it was framed.
And I'm looking at it as assuming that I had the correct genie lamp and I chose the mint leaf, but it's probably maybe the logic is
Mm.
more they must not have gotten the correct genie lamp. So therefore,
Mhm.
right, like that would make a little more sense where it's like if you didn't get the correct genie lamp, if you didn't solve that tiny little, I guess, kind of puzzle or
Oh,
choice.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right, yeah,
Wow.
from the
Yeah, I never
design
thought of that.
perspective, it's like, yeah, maybe that's what it is. They
It's
want you
just,
to
I think it's there to guide you that even when it does happen, something's not quite right. And if you have the ability to fix it, you'd feel like you should restore and do it. But if not, it's like, well, this is what you get because you weren't prepared.
right. Okay, I'm
This
happy
is
with
making
that.
me want to go back and play it and do like some sort of weird off the wall wonky version
Right.
where
Yeah.
maybe I give her the ring right away and then I'm forced into it and we'll see what happens type of thing and the mint thing. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's and it's interesting to me because I've always read reviews about the game, even from Sierra themselves, that say there are multiple different endings. Where, in my opinion, in my line of thinking, I've always thought, well, no, there's two. There's the long and the
Mhm.
short, right? But no, there
Right.
actually are like multiple different ways the game could end. Which I guess is,
Mhm.
if you stop and think about it, it's pretty true about any Sierra game. You don't have to complete and get every single point to complete the game, but
Look at
it's
Colonel's
just interesting
bequest.
how this, yeah, it can just change so much by the end based on things that are done, little things that could have been done out of order, for instance.
Right.
And
It's good
that's what
writing.
I
It,
like. I like it as a player because it makes me feel like what I do makes an impact to the game. Because I don't like it when a
exactly.
game shoehorns you through a story and is like, this is what
Yeah.
happens. And it doesn't matter what dialogue option you pick, and it doesn't matter what inventory item you use because you're railroaded into whatever it is that they want you to be in. So that feeling of freedom makes the whole world that much bigger and more real to me.
That's a good
Oh,
way to put it.
completely. It's not a linear thing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, like not restoring peace in the Isles means that the members of the Isles don't go to your wedding. Like it is
Yeah,
almost the little things become the
exactly.
big things. And I would say,
Hmm.
as much as I really, really, really love Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers, like that's maybe an example of kind of a
Hmm.
cheaper alternate ending, where it's like, yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, at the very end, they're like, go left or right, and you just pick one, you get a slightly different variation of the
Hmm.
same ending, right? It's
Hmm.
not quite as like thought through or complex as King's Quest Six's ending is, where it actually makes
Yeah.
sense why people aren't there if they're not.
It's
Yeah.
like Quest for Glory plays around with that idea because you have the celebratory things that happen at the end of the episode, and certain characters or people shouldn't be there. I mean, they don't always update the screen. They're just like, oh, look at everybody's randomly happy, even though I didn't help them to do this run at all. But the gist of it was there.
Yeah. Hmm.
So good. Well, that's pretty good coverage on the game. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about the game before we spend a few minutes talking specifically about your music, Eric?
No, not that I can think of. I think that was a pretty good review. I think it's really interesting how I just grew up considering it to be the best because that was just me and my perspective, and everybody's perspective is different. It's funny how as an adult and there's all this media and information and everybody has an opinion and it's publicly available. Watching people's reviews on the game, it's not as positive as I experienced it, and
Yeah.
that's completely fine. Everybody has their own viewpoints, and I think that's where having conversations and just talking about stuff and getting different perspectives is fun and helpful, and just gives you a different insight on stuff. So it's been a great conversation. I appreciate it, and it's been a fun time being here for sure. So
Yeah,
excellent.
here.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I like what you said there. It's a really good point about media because I could say that I think my experience of this game in particular, especially compared to you guys playing it in your youth, was maybe a bit dramatic, but for lack of a better term, a bit stained from the outside influence, like from hearing how great it was, as I had mentioned, like. Yeah, like
Right, all the
I
build up,
wonder
yeah.
what my take on this would have been had I heard nothing. Because I think, in a sense, the reason I propped
Sure.
King's Quest IV up so much is because I heard nothing about that game. So when
There you go.
night
Yeah.
turned to day, I was just blown away. I'm like, whoa! Part of the reason I was blown away is because I was like, how did I experience this without it being spoiled? Like, how didn't I know this was going to happen from the Facebook pages and stuff like that? So. But it's just a very interesting point. It makes me happy that Anna always makes it a point to get kind of the origin stories off the bat because it really does shape our experiences,
Yeah.
like whether or not we played it as a youth or not. So yeah, no, this is super fun.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Origin Story. Anybody who listens to this is like you can actually hear me rubbing my hands together all giddy like when I get to ask people their origin stories on a game because the connection is so strong. And like, I get it. Lots of
Yeah.
people have lots of different hobbies and lots of different reasons to bring them together. There's music, there's art, but this is such a specific niche thing. And the feelings a lot of us get are so bloody similar that it's just cathartic for all to sit around and go, yep. It was tricky to get that hole off the wall and play the flute for the wallflowers, but it feels so good to do, man.
Yeah. I remember the feeling when I first started playing adventure games. King's Quest V was the first real adventure I really ever played. And when I got that golden needle, like for the
Right.
first
Oh my
time, I
God.
was so freaking excited. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can get the coat
And it
now.
was
We
in
can
a
go to the
haystack.
mountains now. Yep.
It opens up that
Some random
feeling
little
of
ant thing
dopamine.
found it for me.
King Antony. I love that. Okay, so that's good. So now I would love to hear it if you could just spend a few minutes telling us again about your project as if they never heard us talk about it, and then just advise us where to go and what to do next, because we're just waiting for your instructions, Eric.
Oh, thank you. So, a couple of years ago, I did King's Quest V: Songs of Serenia. It was a remaster of just the original instruments. A few songs I took into my own and redid entirely, but it's 90% original of the King's Quest V entire soundtrack. We released it on vinyl over at a crowdfunded campaign at Crates, Qrates. But they have since stopped accepting new orders. So we're moving now onto Digger's Factory, diggersfactory.com. And they are a great platform. They're based out of France. Their pricing is better, so we're actually able to release King's Quest VI and Ode to the Isles, which I've been working on for the past couple of years since we finished up 5. And we just released digitally the soundtrack for 6, and 5 is there also. At Bandcamp. So it's magicmapstudio.bandcamp.com. But if you want even more content, there's twoguysrecords.bandcamp.com, which also we're linked together. So my records show up there as well. But then you get all of the Space Quest historians and records as well. Well, most of them. He has another couple other pages as well, which I'll point out here in a minute. But We had planned on launching the vinyl release for 6, the campaign for that at Diggers this past week, but it's being a new platform. There's little innuendos that we didn't really know about. So it looks like after I click go on my campaign, after I fully built it up, everybody's double checked it for typos, all that fun stuff. I click go. Well, then they have to review it to actually approve it and actually get it started. And with the time zones and me working Friday and them being in France, we just couldn't get it off the ground. So I'm anticipating a Monday release. And for all those listening in the future, that will be the 11th, March 11th, 2024.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Over at Digger's Factory. I'm sure you can just search for King's Quest 6 there and it'll pop up the campaign, because I don't have the full URL and it's probably quite long if I did. But I'll probably make a bit.ly. Let's just call it, well, I can't do that because I haven't made it yet, and who knows. But yeah, just search for King's Quest 6 at diggersfactory.com. And the campaign, assuming we can get off the ground on the 11th, I think we'll shoot for an ending on April 7th. We might push it, so that's a nice weekend ending. We might push it out another week, because for some people that's spring break and they might not be around, and that is a little bit of on the short end for a campaign anyway. So we might do the 14th as well, but I'll talk to the guys and see what they want to do. I do want to give a shout out also to Trolls' other group that I said I would re-allude to, Error 47. They just completed their we literally finished our projects on the same week. His Soups On project for the 7th hour and the 11th guest, I played a little violin on that here and there, and viola, and that was a Kickstarter. It's already been funded, but we just finished the music at the same exact time that I finished 6. But they are also, thanks, yeah, it's been fun. So they also are doing the cover, because you can't do a proper King's Quest 6 soundtrack without a Girl in the Tower cover, right? Mm-hmm. So they, me not having the percussion, if anything, expertise, and certainly not able to match the style that would have done the song any justice, I inquired with Error 47 and said, hey, do you guys want to cover Girl in the Tower? And I am blown away with what they've done with it. It's fabulous. If you want a song that has 4 or 5 different styles in it, crammed into 6 minutes of music, and an opera singer and Jackie just blew it out of the water, as you would expect, then give this a listen. But that'll be on the vinyl and the digital release as well. And the digital release will also feature an extended version of the song, which, knowing Trolls and Error 47 and how it's probably going to end up, I wouldn't be surprised for a minute if it's like a 20-minute track. I think we're just going to go all out on it. I don't know when that'll be done, but I've heard rumors that that's kind of gonna be a thing, because the original version that he had given to us and said, hey, can we work with this? It was 11 minutes and we hadn't even hit the chorus yet. So, so we'll see what happens with that. Pretty excited about it. But yeah, right now and I do keep my website pretty updated as well. That's the simplest way to get to everything I'm doing, kind of in real time, magicmapstudio.com. It's just right there, simple to get to. It has links to all of my samples at SoundCloud, on Bandcamp, all of that fun stuff. And if you want to contribute to the digital release, you can. Otherwise, it's free to download. I'm not doing any of this for money. In fact, these projects cost me a lot of money to actually do and complete. But I'm willing to do it because I think the composers and Sierra and the games and the community all deserve it. So I hope that what I'm doing here is appreciated and people enjoy listening to it as much as I have working on it. So I super appreciate the audience, and having been able to do this with you guys, I'll probably remember this forever. It's been a really fun afternoon. Thank you.
Wow. No, usually we're making people go, wow. You're making me go, wow. That is so sweet. That's adorable. Oh my goodness. Okay, on that awfully wonderful note, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to our Patreoners. We just got a new one. Retro Floppy is out there. joining us up and helping to support the podcast, which is really,
Cool
really
name.
cool.
Yeah.
And we have our awesome level that doesn't have a name that I need to say right now, but you guys are also so awesome. Brian Manown, Girolamo Castellato, Mark Fillion, who is the same. Okay, and just reminded me, Mark Fillion, it was like a thing that was with some sites. The name was taken. So Mark Fillion, who is definitely Mark Fillion, who is definitely the same person that we had on the Carmen Sandiego episode. So thank you to you. Thank you to Michael Council and Tim Ellis. All of you are in the extra special thanks tier. And
Matthew
we
Turk.
really
Matthew Turk's a new member too. Because you made
yay, Matthew!
Actually,
you told me
your horrendous pun is why I remembered that, because you wrote back Turk him long enough or some.
Leave it to Anna. Right?
I got an oh god. And hey, thanks to Paul Corman, who has been with us for not too long as a participant at $1 a month. We appreciate your support, Paul.
Hey, you got to donate to the cause, right, Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. I donate to the podcast as well. I donate $1 every month. So
nice.
For whatever reason, here we are. Oh, you donate twice. Paul Corman with one email, and then the Phantom Fellows also donates to the podcast.
Yeah,
that's
Paul
great,
Corman with a C.
you guys. That's a beautiful thing. So anyways, thank you to all of you. I mean, we're always assuming nobody's listening. So you guys are in here with your hands up going, hey, no, even if we're not listening, we really care. And I appreciate that. Outside of that, why don't you say hi to us? Reach out. We would love an email, mail@classicgamersguild.com. It's been a little while. You can hit us up on Twitter at CGG Podcast or at the Phantom Fellows. You can check us out on Facebook. We're a page, we're a group, the Classic Gamers Guild. Just search us up in the little notey thing at the top. Do the same thing on Instagram or even on YouTube. Hey, a few people have left us comments on YouTube, and that's cool because we're not really known as a podcast on YouTube. It's not like we have more than one video episode. There's only one, but the fact that people are still going out there, subscribing and finding us out there gives us hope that eventually we're going to give our YouTube channel a little bit more attention. Now it's back to you, Paul.
Don't do a murder.
And go pee. If anybody else has to go pee, this would be the time to write a time
Let's
code
do
down. All right.
Be right back.
All right, everybody peed on cue. Perfect.
I put it back in my pants too soon.
Don't you hate that?
Thanks, man.